Chapter 1025. You're back. The door that had been closed for half a month reopened. Poplar Fruit smiled and said to Fong Beibei and Kiki, "Don't come in yet. I'll open the window and get some fresh air." In the past July, Poplar Fruit and a group of university volunteers had spent their sweat and time in the mountains of Liang City in Guishan province. Among them, Poplar Fruit had the hardest time. He had to abandon his wife and children and follow Meng Ping to all the poor mountainous areas in the city. Even Meng Ping couldn't keep up with Poplar Fruit's pace. Other government officials continued to accompany him. Although it was a bit hard in the past half a month, and Fong Beibei and Kiki were rarely together, the results they achieved were delightful. From Poplar Fruit's field research, the situation in the other poor mountainous areas of Liang City was generally better than that in Lidong County. At least in terms of transportation, it was much more convenient. There was no need for manpower to carry equipment up the mountain. The ambitious Chen Longjiang also wanted to popularize remote teaching in Liang City as soon as possible. Not only did he promote Meng Ping, who had not been in the position of director for a year, to the city's education bureau to help him take charge of this matter, but he also applied to the province to get a special fund support. Of course, because the entire Liang City was too big, even if the special fund was as high as 100 million yuan, it couldn't buy enough equipment. Therefore, the remaining half was donated by Poplar Fruit's charity fund. In the past 6 months, Poplar Fruit's charity fund had received donations from the outside world. Most of them were his fans, and some of them were university students who were enthusiastic about public welfare. However, it added up to less than 1 million yuan. The reason why Poplar Fruit could afford this expenditure of more than 50 million yuan was because Poplar Fruit paid for it himself. The remuneration he earned from Cine Road in the past 6 months was basically invested in the charity fund, but it was estimated that after it was transferred to buy equipment later, the fund account would be stretched again. Poplar Fruit had to continue to work hard to earn money. Currently, he was only helping the children of one city, and it was already too much for him to bear. In the future, there would be many more children who would need his help. Speaking of which, Chen Longjiang found it hard to say. But there was no other way. Guishan province was relatively poor and backward. There were too many places that needed money. Even he could only get a special fund of 100 million through lobbying. Even this special fund of 100 million was not easy to come by. Chen Longjiang even made a military order for this. It would be fine if he succeeded, but if he failed, Chen Longjiang would become a sinner who squandered the money of the people. As mentioned earlier, the remaining half was donated by Poplar Fruit's charity fund. The other half would be donated by the Yangcheng city government. After learning about Chen Longjiang's predicament, Poplar Fruit contacted Zheng Mingsheng, the leader of Guangdong province. Naturally, Zheng Mingsheng would not do it himself, but he also played the role of a bridge. After discussing with the leader of Guishan province, they decided to let Guangdong province's provincial capital, Yangcheng City, and Guishan province's poorest city, Liang City, shake hands and become brother city. This seemed to be the first of its kind in the country. Poplar Fruit did not know much about this. However, he knew that with this mutual aid relationship, remote teaching would receive policy support, such as more university students joining, more excellent teachers training and guidance, and so on. Poplar Fruit did not know that while he was still running around in the mountains, the provincial television stations of Guishan province and Guangdong province had broadcasted this matter. Wang Yubo, who was staying at school, was even lucky enough to be on TV. Poplar Fruit opened the curtains and windows in the house to drive away the stuffy air. Only then did he let Fong Beibei and the others come back. Aya, Kiki likes the sofa at home so much. Kiki ran in, her shoes flying everywhere. She climbed onto the soft sofa and rolled around comfortably. Although she had many friends to play with on the mountain, the place she lived in was not as comfortable as home. "Baby, where did you keep the flag that master gave me?" Poplar Fruit bent down to pick up Kiki's shoes and asked with a smile, "I want to hang it up in the gym." It was a replica of the sect's flag. Although it did not mean anything, it had a bit of commemorative value. "I put it in our suitcase." "You treasure it so much, of course you have to put it away." Fong Beibei laughed. "You are my treasures. You can lose anything, as long as you and Kiki are not lost. Poplar Fruit teased Fong Beibei. Papa, Papa, where's the gold? Where's the gold? At this time, Kiki, who realized that the gold was missing, jumped down from the sofa in a panic and asked her father with tears in her eyes. Poplar Fruit patted Kiki's little head with a smile and said, "When we went to Xiong village, didn't we already send the gold to Grandma's place? Did you forget?" Yes. Kiki thought for a while and then breathed a big sigh of relief. However, she began to pester her father and cried, "Papa, Papa, let's go and get the gold, okay? Kiki misses the gold. Kiki, let Dad and Mom rest for 2 days." Fong Beibei pulled Kiki over and persuaded, "You see, Dad has been driving for 2 days, it's so tiring." Kiki finally understood her father and did not continue to pester. At noon, Poplar Fruit casually cooked some scallop porridge. Everyone had a simple lunch with pickled vegetables and then went to take a nap. Poplar Fruit did the same. He drove all night and did not sleep, so he slept for 3 hours at noon. In the afternoon, when they were packing up, Poplar Fruit received a phone call and talked for a long time. When he came back, Fong Beibei asked curiously, "Uncle, who called? Why did he still speak English?" Poplar Fruit shook his head and said with a smile, "It's not English, it's French. It's Artil. He wants to invite me to go to the Bali Fashion Week again. Did you agree?" Fong Beibei looked at Poplar Fruit and asked, "No, didn't I say that I won't go again? It's good to go once and have an experience. I'm not a professional model." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "In fact, Artil also knows my idea, but he thinks it's a pity, so he invited me again." "Don't tell me you don't want me to go." Fong Beibei stood up and put her arms around Poplar Fruit's neck from behind. She intimately pressed against Poplar Fruit, who was squatting on the ground, and asked sweetly, "Of course." Poplar Fruit smiled and rubbed Fong Beibei's head. He said, "If I go to Bali for 10 days or half a month, who will drive you to and from school?" Fong Beibei hadn't gotten her driver's license yet. Although she used her connections to jump the queue, it still took time to practice driving. Poplar Fruit did not want Fong Beibei to become a road killer among female drivers, who was irresponsible to others and herself. One reason was that he wanted to stay with his girlfriend and daughter and did not want to go everywhere. Another reason was that Poplar Fruit did not want to continue to be in the limelight. At the end of last year, he was besieged by the media and got Fong Beibei into trouble. Poplar Fruit still remembered it in his heart. Chapter 1026. Poplar Fruit did not go to Bali, but when the Bali Fashion Week was approaching at the end of August, entertainment reporters flocked to him, wanting to know what his plans were. Poplar Fruit, who was annoyed beyond words, finally posted a Weibo to reply to the reporters' questions and fans' expectations. Poplar Fruit will not participate in the Bali Fashion Week this year. After all, he is just a student and a scholar. This choice is purely based on his personal preference. Everyone, please don't make any wild guesses. However, even though Poplar Fruit posted an explanation on Weibo, there were still some media who made wild and even malicious guesses about Poplar Fruit's original intention. However, Poplar Fruit did not care much. The innocent knew that he was innocent, and the muddy knew that he was muddy. No matter what the rumors were, he would not move. Poplar Fruit spent the whole of August very peacefully. In the morning, he sent Fong Beibei back to school, sent Kiki to play with her friends, and picked them up in the evening. During this period of time, Yanghua usually read books in the library or found a cafe to do translation. It was monotonous, but it could be said that she had a lot of fun. If Fong Beibei came back early in the evening, Poplar Fruit would take the 2 girls to the high-end swimming pool in the community to learn how to swim. Chichi was a quick learner. She was able to swim in the water without her father's guidance after only 2 trips. In this aspect, Chichi was really a little magical. Although she was nervously waving her claws and baring her fangs during her first time in the water, she could still float on the surface of the water by herself if Yanghua didn't support her. Poplar Fruit was a child who lived by the sea. Needless to say, Fong Beibei also knew how to swim. "Let me teach." Fong Beibei reproachfully pushed Poplar Fruit away. She felt that although Poplar Fruit was a good swimmer, he was born in the wild after all. Other than dog paddling, He could only swing his arms vigorously. He could not swim gracefully. Looking at the two girls he loved the most swimming in the pool like two beautiful fish, Poplar Fruit's heart was overflowing with happiness. Originally, there was a swimming pool in the school. However, the school swimming pool was crowded and the water quality was relatively poor. Poplar Fruit was worried that Kiki's delicate skin could not take it, so he spent money to rent a high-end swimming pool in the community. Anyway, the swimming pool was not very expensive. In addition to swimming, Poplar Fruit also took the time to go to the army to play with his buddies in the Special Forces. This summer, the Special Forces actually recruited a master of Wing Chun from a company below them during the recruitment. Wing Chun was the Chinese traditional martial arts that Bruce Lee's master, Yi Wen, made famous all over the world. Although Poplar Fruit had seen a lot of videos on TV and the internet, but Poplar Fruit had never met a person who had really learned the essence of Wing Chun. Bruce Lee also did not learn the real Wing Chun. Poplar Fruit had heard about it from Xiong Kahu. When Xiong Kahu was young, he had traveled extensively and met a real Wing Chun master in Fujian. Borrowing strength to fight strength, using softness to conquer strength. The most unbearable thing is that in the first 10 seconds, he will chase after you and attack you. His fists and palms are like a storm of pear blossoms. He will beat you until you can't defend yourself. It was said that those who were good could launch 15 attacks in a second, punches, palms, elbows, and knees all counted as one attack, and those who had mastered the essence of it could launch over 100 attacks in the first 10 seconds, making it impossible for anyone to block the. Poplar Fruit was also very interested in this kind of fast Wing Chun. He wanted to know if his Tai Chi, Xing Yi Quan and other Kung Fu could withstand the first 10 seconds of Wing Chun. The new Wing Chun master was called Liang Bin. Although he was a newcomer, he had set a new height for the Special Forces. Even Meng Sanhua was defeated by him. This aroused Poplar Fruit's interest. After receiving the invitation, Poplar Fruit found a chance to go to the barracks within a few days. After the real fight, Liang Bin's Kung Fu was really good. Not only were his moves solid, but he had also learned the true Heart Sutra of Wing Chun. When Poplar Fruit fought with him, it was rare for him to experience the feeling of meeting a worthy opponent. He did not have to be cautious like when he fought with Meng Sanhua. When he used all his strength, Liang Bin could barely support him. Indeed, it was barely enough. In the few seconds when Liang Bin exerted his most ferocious strength, Yang Guo's mutated eyes were still able to break down the afterimages of his attacks, and easily block them. When Poplar Fruit was full and memorized all the moves, Poplar Fruit used his fast Tai Chi to counterattack. Brother Yang is too OP. Liang Bin finally twisted his wrist and said to Meng Sanhua, I feel like I'm being abused. He hasn't used his full strength yet. You only know now. Meng Sanhua laughed. He's not human. Do you know the Tiger Army in Beijing? Some time ago, he beat up 2 retired old men half to death in less than a minute. Why did he beat them up? Liang Bin was shocked. The capital's Tiger Legion was the most elite special forces in all of China. Even he couldn't enter. After they retired, they helped the Avilders. Forget it, you don't have to guess the relationship between them. Meng Sanhua patted Liang Bin's head. He had a few more years of experience than Liang Bin, so this was the only thing he could boast about. Liang Bin, come. See if I'm good at it. While Liang Bin was still chatting, Poplar Fruit stood there and pondered for a while. Then he happily called Liang Bin over and performed a round of Wing Chun in front of him. Brother Yang, how did you learn it? Have you learned it before? Liang Bin was so shocked that his jaw almost dropped. Although Poplar Fruit's Wing Chun looked good, it was still the real Wing Chun Kung Fu. And this was when Poplar Fruit was a little rusty and did not use the internal strength of Tai Chi. If Poplar Fruit used real Kung Fu and made some adjustments, the power might not be inferior to Liang Bin's Wing Chun. I just learned it from you. Poplar Fruit's answer destroyed Liang Bin's hope. He was speechless when he realized that Poplar Fruit had been baiting him to make him feel that he could win if he put in more effort, forcing him to use his real Kung Fu and then secretly learn it. No, it should be said that he learned it openly. This was Poplar Fruit's talent. Even Liang Bin could not say anything about it. My grandfather said that I am the strongest and most promising of my generation. Liang Bin looked up at the sky and sighed. It seems that the title of genius should be given to you, Brother Yang. What kind of genius am I in front of you? No, he's not a genius. He's a genius killer. Meng Sanhua slapped the back of Liang Bin's head to wake him up from his depression. He laughed and said, if you lose confidence, you'll never catch up with Poplar Fruit. The more we meet such opponents, the more motivated we will be. With Meng Sanhua around, Liang Bin would recover quickly and continue to grow. Poplar Fruit, on the other hand, did not have time to be complacent about his newly learned Wing Chun, because a new problem was placed in front of him. Or rather, it was Song Jiwen's problem. Chapter 10:27. Song Jiwen called Poplar Fruit at around 7 o'clock in the evening and asked him to come out and drink with him. This was really unprecedented. Poplar Fruit had always been the one to confide in Song Jiwen when he encountered problems. When had Song Jiwen ever confided in Poplar Fruit? Not to mention whether Song Jiwen would find someone else to talk about these things, he had almost never encountered an emotional problem that could make him drown his sorrows in alcohol. Because in his eyes before, emotions were not a problem at all. Except for that one time with Xiao Yarrow, uncle, when you go, don't drink too much. Be careful. Fong Beibei said worriedly as she sent Poplar Fruit out. Papa, you're not allowed to drink. After drinking, you'll become smelly. Kiki strongly objected. When she was on the mountain, she smelled the breath of those uncles after drinking, and it almost made Kiki faint. Don't worry, Papa won't drink. Poplar Fruit smiled and comforted. The main thing is to talk with him for a while, and then when he's drunk, I'll send him back. After seeing Song Jiwen, he had already started drinking. This guy, a box of beer was placed at his feet, and he had already thrown in 2 empty bottles. In fact, Poplar Fruit did not need to guess to know that it should be about Chen Anlan. At the end of the term, Chen Anlan went back to school to complete the graduation procedures, but that time, it was nearly 2 months, and he only came back last week. Could it be that after Chen Anlan came back, Song Jiwen confessed, and then failed and fell out of love? I know you're not loyal enough to drink with me, Song Jiwen said as he waved his hand to ask the boss to send a few bottles of drinks. It's okay, I'll drink by myself. With that, he gulped down half a bottle of beer, and then burped loudly. Hey, don't be in such a hurry to drink it. Poplar Fruit pressed down on his bottle and laughed. I'm still confused. Song Jiwen stared blankly at the beer bottle for a while, then shook his head and said, I'm not happy. What are you unhappy about? Poplar Fruit smelled the fragrance of the skewers and picked one up to eat slowly. What do you think? Song Jiwen asked as he started drinking again. And Lan? Poplar Fruit shook his head and asked. Song Jiwen was in a daze. He just drank without saying a word. Did you fail to confess your love? Or did your confession fail? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Didn't you say that a man doesn't have to worry about not having a wife? So what if his confession failed? Damn it, I didn't even confess, okay? Song Jiwen glanced at Poplar Fruit and complained. Then why are you unhappy? Didn't she just come back? Poplar Fruit asked curiously. Song Jiwen drank a mouthful of wine and said in a muffled voice, I'm leaving. He threw the empty bottle into the box and picked up another bottle. He then stood up and said, Help me open the bottle, I need to go to the toilet. Hey, what do you mean? Poplar Fruit shouted at him gloomily. When Song Jiwen came back, Poplar Fruit asked the same question again. What do you mean by leaving? What do you mean? Go home. Song Jiwen continued drinking. You just came back from home and you're going back again? Poplar Fruit asked in surprise. Song Jiwen didn't say a word and just drank. He ate a few skewers like a tornado before slowly chewing. The boxing school has been transferred out. After a long time, he said with an ugly expression, I probably won't come back this time. Ah. Poplar Fruit was a little surprised. He couldn't accept this fact because Chen Anlan didn't mention it to him before. However, this was also because Poplar Fruit was too careless. When Chen Anlan came back and had a meal with everyone, he didn't notice Chen Anlan's gloomy mood. If the boxing school had been transferred out, then she might really have to leave. One had to know that the martial arts school was something she had slowly built up bit by bit after coming to Yangcheng. How could she be willing to transfer the boxing school? Poplar Fruit asked in disbelief. She did so well. It's because she's doing so well that her family wants her to go back and manage the family's Tai Chi dojo after she graduates. Song Jiwen smiled bitterly. He shook his head and downed half a bottle of wine. Poplar Fruit was silent for a while and asked, "Since you like her, why didn't you mention it to her? Maybe if you tell her, she'll stay for you." Song Jiwen shook his head and didn't say anything. He just kept drinking and ate when he was a little full. "Old Guo, you don't understand." Song Jiwen burped and said with drunken eyes, "Let me tell you, it's impossible for us to be together. Drink less." Poplar Fruit began to control Song Jiwen's drinking speed, not letting him drink in big gulps. First of all, she's a person with great ambition. She wholeheartedly wants to achieve great things and carry forward the martial spirit of Tai Kai. Song Jiwen chuckled and said, "It's true that we like her, but we don't have the qualifications to stop her from achieving her dreams, right?" Poplar Fruit was silent. He didn't know how to answer this question. Perhaps it was possible to achieve her dreams in Yangcheng, but she also knew that Chen Anlan's foundation was in the north, in Jin City. Secondly, it's because of myself. Song Jiwen continued to drink and said, "You also know that my mother has always wanted me to find a girl from Cantonese province, and it's best if she's a local. What she thinks isn't important, what's important is what you think." Poplar Fruit couldn't help but say, "Yes, what's important is what I think. I'm also very hesitant." Song Jiwen patted the table and said, "Tell me, if I marry her and we still quarrel like now, how are we going to live? There are too many things that don't agree with her. How can it be so fast? You guys should try to date first. If it doesn't work out, you can talk about marriage after you succeed." Poplar Fruit said, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Dating without the purpose of marriage is just acting like a hooligan. Song Jiwen, under the influence of alcohol, suddenly stood up and shouted, attracting the attention of all the diners in the food stall. Poplar Fruit bitterly smiled and pulled him down. Poplar Fruit really didn't know how to ridicule this guy. This sentence wasn't bad, but no matter who said it, it couldn't have come from the mouth of a playboy like you. Who would believe it? However, thinking about Song Jiwen's change last year, Poplar Fruit sighed and patted his shoulder, comforting him. This sentence doesn't necessarily mean that. As long as you don't act like a hooligan to the girl, it's fine to date properly, right? It's too late to say anything. Song Jiwen waved his hand and pushed Poplar Fruit away. He opened another bottle of wine and continued to drink. Chapter 1028. It was not easy to get drunk from beer. During this period, Song Jiwen went to the toilet many times, but he was not drunk yet. However, the effects of the alcohol had already kicked in, and he began to ramble and speak incoherently. Moreover, there was a tendency to transform into an emotional philosopher. "Laro Guo, let me tell you, in a person's life, gold and jade are easy to obtain, but a good match is hard to come by." Song Jiwen held a skewer in his hand and looked at it carefully. Then, he started to chuckle. Even though he was laughing, Poplar Fruit didn't like it. "Others like you, but you're so reserved that you chase them away. The person you like quarrels with you every day and doesn't even care about you." Song Jiwen's expression was calm, as if he was talking about someone else. If it wasn't for the Poplar Fruit taking away his bottle, he would have continued drinking. Poplar Fruit frowned and said, "You didn't confess. How do you know she doesn't miss you? Or, does she have feelings for you? Did I say that?" Song Jiwen burped and stuttered. "I told her that I didn't want to go back and wanted to stay in Yangcheng." Guess what she said? Poplar Fruit didn't want to guess. He knew that Chen Anlan must have said something to agitate Song Jiwen. Song Jiwen didn't need Poplar Fruit to continue the conversation since he only needed someone to talk to. He smiled wryly and said, "Why did little Pepper stay in Yangcheng? To her, Yangcheng is like an inn. She comes, takes a rest, and leaves. Her home is in the north. She is a wolf from the north." This guy suddenly jumped up, opened his arms, and rushed to the riverside to sing. She was supposed to sing, but as she sang, it became wolf in sheep's clothing. "I'm sure that I'll be by your side for the rest of my life. I'll follow you wherever you go with a fiery heart. I'm sure that you're the lamb in my heart." You're my angel. You're my dream. You make me crazy and crazy. The howls of love for you are still echoing in the valley. With his somewhat hoarse voice, he actually sang this song heartbreakingly. His singing made the listeners' hearts ache, and they even ignored his already messed up lyrics. Poplar Fruit shook his head. He took out his wallet and threw a few red notes on the table. He then picked up a bottle of wine and walked over. Poplar Fruit comfortingly patted Song Jiwen's shoulder and said, "Drink it, and then you'll feel better after drinking it." He didn't know what to do with this brother of his, nor did he know how to persuade him. Moreover, wasn't the best way for a man to get drunk. Song Jiwen picked up the bottle and poured it into his mouth, but nothing came out. When he opened his hazy eyes, he realized that there was no cap. "Help me open it." Song Jiwen shamelessly stuffed the beer bottle back into Poplar Fruit's hands. He lowered his head and looked at Poplar Fruit's hand in a trance. He directly lifted the bottle cap with his thumb. "Damn, how are you so good?" Song Jiwen asked in surprise. In fact, Poplar Fruit couldn't do it in the past. Now, it was mainly because of the strength in his hands that he could do it so easily. He smiled and handed the opened beer to Song Jiwen and said, "Drink it. Drink it and go back." According to Poplar Fruit's understanding of Song Jiwen, this guy was almost drunk. Moreover, the after-effects were gradually coming up. After drinking this bottle, he could easily send him back to sleep. "After drinking this bottle of wine, my troubles are gone," Song Jiwen muttered as he stared at the beer bottle in a daze. Suddenly, he raised his head and gulped it down. In order to prevent the situation from happening again, Poplar Fruit took Song Jiwen back to the food stall to use the restroom, and then drove him back. This time, Song Jiwen really drank too much. As soon as he got in the car, he fell unconscious on his back. Poplar Fruit reached out to help him fasten his seatbelt. Poplar Fruit sent him home in silence. After all, he had lived here before. Poplar Fruit easily helped Song Jiwen upstairs. Just as he was looking for the key to open the door opposite opened. Chen Anlan stood there in his long pajamas. He frowned at Poplar Fruit and the others. Poplar Fruit looked at him. His eyes were a little flustered, as if he had done something bad. "Why do you always drink so much?" Chen Anlan sighed and went to open the door for them. "No, nothing. He just can't think straight about work." Poplar Fruit lied. He quickly helped Song Jiwen in and threw him on the sofa. "Drinking is bad for the body. Brother Yang, you should persuade him. Last time he drank so much that he vomited in the middle of the night." Chen Anlan went to the coffee table, boiled some water, and poured some tea leaves into the teapot. "I saw that he wanted to drink so much, so I let him drink to his heart's content." Poplar Fruit scratched his head embarrassedly and said with a smile, "Actually, he doesn't drink often now. It's okay to get drunk occasionally, right?" "How is it occasionally? Doesn't he often socialize? Sometimes he drinks with the leaders, sometimes he drinks with you guys." Chen Anlan shook his head, looked at Poplar Fruit, and said, "Brother Yang, you practice martial arts. You should know how harmful drinking is to the body. In the future, you should persuade him, right? Then why don't you talk to him? You usually live across from him." Poplar Fruit couldn't help but ask sarcastically. Chen Anlan's eyes drifted. He turned to look at the unboiled water and said, "What's the use of me telling him? Tell him that it's just another fight. I'm going to leave. I don't want to continue arguing with him." The scene suddenly became cold. Poplar Fruit didn't know what to say. He watched Chen Anlan boil the water and began to make a pot of strong tea. "Anlan, you know, mosquito, he actually has feelings for you, right?" Poplar Fruit hesitated for a long time before he said. Although Song Jiwen was already confused, Poplar Fruit still wanted to fight for him. Chen Anlan turned his head and looked at Song Jiwen, who was smirking in his drunken dream. Her mood today was also a little low, which was somewhat different from her usual energetic appearance. "Brother Yang, you know, some things can't be forced," Chen Anlan finally said to Poplar Fruit faintly. Yang Guo actually did not know that the two of them were quarreling. Song Jiwen had even said a few harsh words to Chen Anlan in the past. He had told Chen Anlan quite straightforwardly that their family was against girls from other provinces. Actually, it was the same. How warm was Liu Suqin to Chen Anlan back then? Later, she gradually calmed down and just treated Song Jiwen as an ordinary friend. Besides, just like Song Jiwen's understanding of Chen Anlan really couldn't let go of her family in Jincheng. She had a big ambition, which was to develop the family's Tai Chi dojo. She couldn't let the Korean Taekwondo dojo be so arrogant. Moreover, Chen Anlan wasn't uncertain about it. She more or less knew about Song Jiwen's previous experience of wandering in love from Song Jiwen. It was Song Jiwen who bragged about it. This was originally the image of a playboy that Chen Anlan despised since she was a child. What Song Jiwen had shown her was also limited to a very faint impression that could be broken with a single blow. So why should she continue to be entangled with him? Poplar fruit sighed. He also knew that a forcibly picked melon wouldn't be sweet, so he simply didn't say much. Brother Yang, you go back first. Bebe must be anxiously waiting for you at home. I'll be fine here. Chen Anlan finally sent Poplar fruit away. She was left standing on the balcony, under the bleak moonlight, blowing the night wind, listening to Song Jiwen snoring in the room like a pig, confused and helpless. Chapter 10:29. If something had happened that night when Song Jiwen was drunk, it would have been easier to deal with. However, nothing happened in the end. After Song Jiwen woke up, he was still rude to Chen Anlan. However, Chen Anlan was still as hot-tempered as before. He was provoked by Song Jiwen and rolled up his sleeves, ready to fight. Poplar fruit didn't know what to do either. A week passed, and it was the weekend again. Chen Anlan was finally leaving Yangcheng. Poplar fruit, Fong Beibei, and Kiki were all present. Fong Beibei even helped to pack the luggage. Kiki looked reluctant to leave. Sister Anlan, in the future, don't forget Kiki. If you have the chance, you have to visit Kiki. Millimeter, bring back Kiki delicious food. Kiki hugged Chen Anlan's leg and pouted. Hey, why do you make it sound like you're going to be parted forever? What year is it now? Can't we call and even video chat? Song Jiwen yawned as he shook his legs on the sofa. He was bored to death. His words were a bit of a killjoy. Even Poplar fruit slapped him and said, if you're not going to help, then don't cause trouble here. Brother Mosquito, come and help to pack. It looks like there's a lot of luggage. Fong Beibei called out. Asking Song Jiwen to help was a lie. She wanted him to show off in front of Chen Anlan. However, Song Jiwen was going to be lazy to the end today. Not only did he not help, he was also slacking off. Now, he was simply lying on the sofa. No need to pack, it's too messy. Chen Anlan glanced at him and said, he can't pass the security check with so many things on the plane. Keep it. If he doesn't want it, then give it to the next renter. This house was originally rented by Poplar fruit. Later, he gave it to Chen Anlan, and Chen Anlan renewed the lease for another year. Now that Chen Anlan had left, he had already listed the house as a sublet. The next tenant had already signed the contract and was waiting to move back in at the beginning of September. Looking at the gradually empty house, Fong Beibei inexplicably felt melancholy. Back then, when she first came to Poplar fruit's house to play, she came here. Holding hands with Yang Guo, she held Yang Guo's hand tightly. Poplar fruit turned to look at her and reached out his other hand to hug her. Aya, flaunting your love as if there's no one around. You're really shameless. Song Jiwen jumped up from the sofa, looked at his phone, and said, I'm going to take a call. After that, he went out. Chen Anlan looked at his back with a lonely expression. Humans were not plants. How could they be emotionless? Over the past year, although the two of them had quarreled often, in fact, it was also because of their quarreling that they had a deeper impression of each other. Song Jiwen might be lazy today, but that was because he didn't know what was wrong with him. In the past, Song Jiwen was only good at talking. When it was time for him to take action, he would never deliberately avoid it. Just like Wenlan Martial Arts Club, Chen Anlan always felt that without Song Jiwen, he wouldn't be able to succeed. Even Poplar fruit, who played the role of image ambassador in publicity, was not as important as Song Jiwen. Fong Beibei saw Chen Anlan's expression. When Song Jiwen returned, She stood up and questioned Song Jiwen, "Brother Mosquito." Song Jiwen looked at her in confusion. Fong Beibei said angrily, "Sister Lan is about to leave. Don't you have anything to say to her?" Fong Beibei's words stunned everyone. Kiki hesitated for a moment, then raised her hand and said, "Kiki has something to say to Sister Lan." "No, you have nothing to say." Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He picked up Kiki, covered her little mouth, and whispered in her ear, "Don't disturb Sister Lan now." Without the little troublemaker Kiki, the atmosphere froze again. Chen Anlan was also stunned. He stared at Song Jiwen. Song Jiwen suddenly said with certainty, "Yes, of course. Then go and say it. Be brave." Fong Beibei pushed him. Even a gentle girl like Fong Beibei couldn't stand it anymore. "Okay, I'll say it." Song Jiwen stood in front of Chen Anlan, whose face was slightly red, and smiled. "Ahem, it's like this." Song Jiwen didn't dare to look at Chen Anlan's glasses. He said, "Just now, the leader called and asked me to go back and work overtime." Everyone was dumbfounded. No one knew that Song Jiwen was going to say this. Song Jiwen didn't have any intention of stopping. He continued to speak frankly, without a trace of shame on his face. "It's like this, I'm going out in a while, so I don't have time to send you. Isn't Larogua here? His car is big enough to send you to the plane. Why don't you take Larogua's car?" Chen Anlan stared straight at him, as if he was about to explode in anger. Fong Beibei quickly ran over and grabbed Chen Anlan's arm. If it was in the past, Song Jiwen would add fuel to the fire, and wouldn't stop until he provoked Chen Anlan's anger. But today, he didn't seem to be in the mood. He laughed dryly and said, "Sorry, it's fine. The next time you come to Yangcheng, I'll treat you to a meal as an apology. Now, I'm going to go back and prepare. I'm going to work overtime." Song Jiwen turned around casually, as if the girl he was talking to was just an ordinary friend. Even if he didn't send her off, it didn't matter at all. Poplar Fruit gave Fong Beibei a look, and quickly opened the door to chase after him. "Hey, Mosquito, what are you doing?" Poplar Fruit asked unhappily. To be honest, Song Jiwen's performance today was really too disappointing. "I didn't do anything. Didn't I say I'm going to work overtime?" Song Jiwen still said with a smile. It was as if the sadness he felt when he was drinking that night never happened. "You're lying to us, right? Since when did you go to work overtime on the weekend? Aren't you a civil servant?" Poplar Fruit said speechlessly. "What's the benefit of lying to you?" Song Jiwen said with a smile that was not a smile, "Why don't I show you my phone? My boss, Chief Li, just called me. Can't you reject it? There are so many people, and you're the only one missing. Can't you let someone else replace you?" Poplar Fruit asked unhappily. "Yes, but the leader will make things difficult for me." Song Jiwen patted Poplar Fruit and said, "Okay, don't worry about me. It's not like we're going to be separated forever. Today she went back, but will she not come to Yangcheng to play in the future? Don't always think about love." "But, she's Chen Anlan," Poplar Fruit shouted. Song Jiwen paused, and then smiled without turning his head. "I know." After that, he opened the door, went in, and closed the door, leaving only the sound of his voice floating in the corridor. Chapter 10:30. After being stunned for a while, Poplar Fruit returned to the house opposite. He saw Chen Anlan staring at the luggage on the ground. Poplar Fruit looked at Fong Beibei with a questioning look. Fong Beibei waved her hand and sighed. Kiki didn't say much. She blinked her big eyes and stood on the sofa next to her. She looked at her parents for a while and then looked at Sister Lan for a while. "Let's go." After Chen Anlan came back to her senses, she said to Poplar Fruit, "Brother Yang, let's go to the airport." "So early? There are still 3 hours." Poplar Fruit asked in surprise, "Don't you want to stay a little longer?" Chen Anlan smiled and shook her head. "It's okay. Let's leave early so that there won't be a traffic jam later." Poplar Fruit had no choice but to help carry the luggage downstairs. Before going downstairs, Poplar Fruit knocked on Song Jiwen's door and shouted, "Mosquito, we're going to the airport." However, Song Jiwen's room didn't respond at all. Poplar Fruit shook his head and opened his hands to everyone. Let's go. When they reached the place where Poplar Fruit parked downstairs, Chen Anlan suddenly shouted, "Wait." Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei both looked over in confusion. Chen Anlan hesitated for a while, then took out a bunch of keys from her right pocket and handed it to Poplar Fruit. "This is his spare key. Brother Yang, help me give it to him later." Chen Anlan looked at the bunch of keys with some loneliness in her eyes. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei looked at each other. In the end, Poplar Fruit took the keys, opened the door, and let them get in. Poplar Fruit drove slowly out of the neighborhood so that Chen Anlan could take another look at the place where she had lived for almost a year. And Song Jiwen did not appear from beginning to end. In the car, Fong Beibei tried to comfort Chen Anlan, who looked gloomy. Chen Anlan smiled and said, "Beibei, I'm fine. Don't worry." After hesitating for a while, Poplar Fruit said, "Anlan, Song Jiwen isn't usually like this." "I know." Chen Anlan answered without hesitation. However, Poplar Fruit really wanted to save Song Jiwen's impression of him. As he drove, he said, "You may not know this, but that day, he drank and cried in my car. He's definitely not a heartless person." Poplar Fruit said, "What we saw today, he was too abnormal. I suspect that he didn't want to face it." Chen Anlan was silent for a while, then said, "I know. In the past, he was a little. He didn't care much about his feelings. But when you met him, he had already changed. He didn't go out to play all night for a whole year." Poplar Fruit continued, "Also, I think that he really has feelings for you. Do you know? He never asked me out to drink because of feelings in the past." The more Yanghua spoke, the more energetic she became. The more Chen Anlan listened, the more silent he became. In the past, he wasn't such a timid person, really. When he meets a girl he likes, he will take the initiative to confess, but only you. He has been suppressing his feelings, afraid that his immaturity will hurt you. Poplar Fruit said with a sigh. Fong Beibei also persuaded her, "Yes, Sister Anlan, don't be fooled by Brother Mosquito's appearance today. Maybe he is deliberately making you angry, and he still doesn't want you to leave." Since Chen Anlan was about to leave, Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei simply let go of the matter. Otherwise, there would be no chance in the future. "Then why didn't he tell me personally?" Chen Anlan's eyes were a little red as she suddenly asked. Poplar Fruit was silent for a while, then said, "He said that he didn't want to delay your future." Chen Anlan turned her head and did not make a sound for a long time. "There's no other way." Poplar Fruit sighed in his heart. In front of them was the intercity highway overpass. As long as they got on the highway, it would take less than 20 minutes to reach the airport. At this moment, Yanghua didn't have any desires. She just held onto the steering wheel with some regret. Kiki, on the other hand, was in the car looking at Sister Anlan, who had turned her head to look at the scenery. No one knew what her little head was thinking. "Wait a minute, Brother Yang. Wait a minute." Chen Anlan's firm voice suddenly came from behind. Poplar Fruit immediately turned on the turn signal and slowed down to the side of the road. He turned back to look at Chen Anlan in surprise and asked, "Sister Anlan, did something drop?" "Big Brother Yang." Chen Anlan took a deep breath and said firmly, "Can I trouble you to turn around and go back? I have a question that I want to ask him." "What are you waiting for?" Fong Beibei, on the other hand, was a little happy. She patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder and said angrily, "Hurry up and drive." Oh. Poplar Fruit suddenly understood and quickly turned the car around. Chichi seemed to have realized something and started giggling as well. On the way back, Poplar Fruit drove a little faster, as if he was afraid that Song Jiwen would have already gone to work if he went back late. However, before he reached the ground floor of the neighborhood, Poplar Fruit had already seen Song Jiwen squatting on the curb of the roadside in a somewhat dispirited manner. He did not know if he was counting ants or doing something else, but his head was lowered. Chen Anlan did not wait for the car to stop and couldn't wait to open the door and jump out. Then, he aggressively walked towards Song Jiwen. As he walked, he threw the hat on his head to the side, looking like a gangster about to fight. Song Jiwen, of course, heard the sound. When he looked up and saw Chen Anlan, he quickly stepped back. "This is going to work, right?" Chen Anlan glanced at the slippers on Song Jiwen's feet and asked with a sharp gaze. Hee, yes. Song Jiwen gave a hollow laugh. Going to work? Then why were you squatting on the ground? Chen Anlan stared into Song Jiwen's eyes, leaving him with no way to escape. It's my shoelaces. My shoelaces are loose. Song Jiwen braced himself. Shoelaces? Where did your shoelaces come from? Chen Anlan took a step forward and pressed Song Jiwen's head down. She pointed at his slippers and asked. Hey, Lao Guo is here. Can you give me some face? Song Jiwen shouted in resistance. We won't look. You guys can do whatever you want. Poplar Fruit quickly called Fong Beibei and Kiki back to the car. However, they all shrank to the back of the car and peeked through the window. Song Jiwen. Chen Anlan let go of her hand, but she still stared at him. She took a deep breath and her eyes began to redden. What? Song Jiwen did not dare to look into Chen Anlan's eyes. His eyes were wandering and he asked in a loud voice. Can't you be a little more like a man? Chen Anlan shouted loudly. She was afraid that Song Jiwen, who was standing in front of her, could not hear her. Don't be shy like a girl. Do you like me or not? Just tell me directly. Song Jiwen was stunned. He stared blankly at the hysterical Chen Anlan. It was as if he was stunned by her lion's roar. If you don't like me, don't make me think about you. Once I leave, everything will be over. Chen Anlan's small body could explode with so much energy. Even Poplar Fruit, who was in the car far away, could hear her voice clearly. You won't say yes. Okay, I got it. Song Jiwen was in a daze. It was as hateful as his indifferent attitude today. Chen Anlan was a little disappointed. She blinked her eyes hard, stomped her foot, turned around and left. Chapter 1031. Pa. As Chen Anlan turned to leave, her hand was caught by Song Jiwen. He didn't give Chen Anlan time to think. He pulled Chen Anlan's arm forcefully and pulled her back into his embrace. Then, Song Jiwen lowered his head and kissed her. Compared to the petite Chen Anlan, Song Jiwen was indeed a little taller. But could anyone imagine the usually violent Chen Anlan being hugged by Song Jiwen like a little bird? Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei saw it. Moreover, before Chen Anlan could move, she was kissed by Song Jiwen. This kiss was so forceful and affectionate. At that moment, Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei seemed to see eternity. They were so touched that they even forgot to cover Kiki's curious gaze. Was it really eternity? Of course not. With an ah sound, Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei both took a deep breath. Poplar Fruit quickly covered Kiki's head in his arms, afraid that Kiki would see this bloody and violent scene. When they turned around, Song Jiwen was already pressed to the ground by Chen Anlan with a solid shoulder throw. Ouch, it hurts. Song Jiwen's face was tightly pressed against the dusty ground. On the other side, Chen Anlan's palm was pressing down. He didn't even have time to react before he was taken down by Chen Anlan. He had to admit that Chen Anlan's kung fu was pretty good. You've got guts, haven't you? How dare you take advantage of me? Chen Anlan scolded fiercely. Indeed, Song Jiwen was provoked by Fong Beibei's confession, which made him do such an out-of-line action. Don't forget, it was always Chen Anlan who bullied Song Jiwen. When did Song Jiwen have the ability to kiss Chen Anlan? I just can't control myself, can't I? Song Jiwen complained with a sullen face. Chen Anlan snorted and let go of her hand. She stood up and frowned at Song Jiwen, saying, I'm starting to regret it. Why? Song Jiwen hurriedly got up from the ground and asked. Chen Anlan wiped her still red lips, her eyes flashed with a hint of shyness, and said, How can you act so recklessly? You didn't talk nicely, you just have to get physical, right? Also, your movements are so skillful. Have you used it on many women before? Chen Anlan wasn't so easily subdued by Song Jiwen. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei, who were in the car, were stunned. This was like a TV series with twists and turns, making it impossible for people to guess what would happen next. Song Jiwen smiled bitterly and quibbled, When have I used it on many women? If the first pull and hug were to be said, Song Jiwen could swear to God that this was his first time. Well, just the first 2 actions were enough. Hehe, do you think I'll believe you? Chen Anlan said sarcastically, looking at him with disdain. Song Jiwen was also beginning to be unconvinced. He said, then what do you want? That depends on what you want. Chen Anlan didn't shrink back. She raised her head and looked straight at him. The 2 of them were like guessing riddles, talking in a language that no one could understand. I don't want to do anything. Song Jiwen paused and said, I just don't want you to leave. Why? Chen Anlan still raised her head like a proud little rooster. Based on the fact that you like me, and then I like you too. Song Jiwen didn't beat around the bush and said straightforwardly. Fart. Chen Anlan couldn't help but laugh. She pushed Song Jiwen away a little and said, you're so shameless. When did I say that I like you? Do you even need to say it? Song Jiwen imitated Chen Anlan's northeastern dialect and said, it's written all over your face. Go to hell. Chen Anlan's face was red. She wanted to pounce on Song Jiwen and chase after him, but Song Jiwen had already dodged with a smile. Stop right there. Chen Anlan grabbed the hem of Song Jiwen's clothes and hit him again. Tell me, do you still dare to lie to me and say that you don't want to see me off when you work overtime? Chen Anlan grabbed Song Jiwen's collar and asked in a threatening manner. Song Jiwen was pulled closer. Looking at Chen Anlan's face, he didn't have any fear at this moment. Instead, there was a kind of appreciation or joy in his eyes. He shook his head with a smile and didn't quibble. Chen Anlan was a little shy. She still couldn't accept Song Jiwen's fiery eyes. She pushed Song Jiwen away again. Chen Anlan pretended to look at her watch and said, well, I should go. Are you going to see me off? Ah! Song Jiwen couldn't stay calm anymore. He asked in surprise, what did you say? Why are you leaving? Didn't you say that you're not going? Chen Anlan hesitated for a moment. She looked at Song Jiwen seriously and said, I still have to go back. I need to explain what I'm going to do. It won't be too long. Maybe half a year. I'll be back in half a year. Half a year. That long? Song Jiwen scratched his head in distress. However, Chen Anlan looked at him firmly and didn't have any intention of changing her mind. In fact, she had sacrificed enough, hadn't she? She might have to put down her ambitions for Song Jiwen. She might have to give up the new operation experience that she had painstakingly accumulated for nothing. It was only half a year. Okay, I'll wait for you. Song Jiwen's eyes flashed with gentleness as he said softly, don't make promises that are too perfect. Chen Anlan took a deep breath, bit her lower lip and said, if you can't wait, then don't. I might not come back anyway. No, I'll wait for you. If you don't come back, I'll go get you. Song Jiwen said domineeringly as he waved his hand. You! Chen Anlan said with some disdain, you can't even beat me. I have a fighter. I'll bring Laro Guo to get you. Even if we have to fight the 18 bronze men formation, we'll get you back. Song Jiwen said confidently. What are they talking about? Fong Beibei couldn't hear clearly. She and Kiki both looked at Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit spread out his hands and said innocently, I don't know. I don't know how to read lips. They guessed that Song Jiwen had already brought Chen Anlan back. He waved at Poplar Fruit and shouted, Laro Guo, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and get ready to drive. If you don't hurry up, you might not be able to catch the plane. In the end, Chen Anlan still left, leaving Song Jiwen, who took her first kiss, alone in Yangcheng. Oh, no, she also left her luggage behind. She left empty-handed. In her words, she might come back. Why did she bring so many things? In the end, these things were brought back to Song Jiwen's apartment for safekeeping. What? In the future, will Chen Anlan still come back? What a joke, is this still a problem? Chen Anlan's apartment has already been rented out, where will she stay when she comes back? Hehe, brother, this won't be a problem. Chapter 1032. Before Higoshiyama University reopened, Poplar Fruit made a trip to Liang City. Fong Beibei and Kiki didn't follow along. However, the lineup was still huge. Or rather, It should be said that it was luxurious. Such a huge lineup was all for the sake of testing the results of the remote teaching that Fat Dragon and CAI Simon had spent over a month to set up. Naturally, the reason why they were able to complete the project so quickly was definitely not solely due to the efforts of Fat Dragon and CAI Simon. They were already employees of the company, and were mainly busy with the construction of the software. In reality, the ones who were busy going up and down the mountain to assemble the hardware were the volunteers from the dozens of villages from the previous project. After going through experience and training, they were recruited into CAI Simon's computer company as maintenance staff stationed in Liang City. This time, they were even more passionate as they participated in this huge project. Another reason was the support of Liang City's Chen Longjiang. He had gathered all the computer teachers and physical education teachers in the city to provide manpower support. He had also ensured that the funds and infrastructure would be quickly implemented. It could be said that for the entire month of August, the entire city of Liang City was in full swing. The only difference was that the focus was placed on the mountainous areas that no one would normally pay attention to. You've done a good deed. However, Poplar Fruit didn't complain because of this. On one hand, the money he was burning wasn't from his charity fund, nor was it a special fund allocated for the children's education. On the other hand, this show had also given the remote teaching a lot of positive effect. At the very least, this was the headline news of the provincial television station. On the second day, this news was actually edited and broadcast on the central television station. It was a bit like becoming world famous overnight. Poplar Fruit and the New Dimensions remote teaching were lucky enough to show their faces on the news broadcast. Immediately after, they were welcomed by the domestic media. There was no need to talk about the Guangdong province. Some of the government's mouthpieces had already prepared headlines for Poplar Fruit. When Poplar Fruit returned to Yang City, a reporter from the People's Daily was already waiting in the school's principal's office, waiting for an exclusive interview with him. Although it wasn't the headline, the new issue of People's Daily had actually used an entire page to report on Poplar Fruit and the New Dimensions remote teaching. The reporter from People's Daily was very emotional. He quoted from Poplar Fruit's book Longing for the Dawn, "Because I had to rush to attend the translation conference, I had to go down the mountain. However, during the week of the meeting in Great City, every time I closed my eyes, I seemed to see the children's dark faces and bright eyes. They were the most innocent, curious, and sincere eyes in the world. They were also the most ignorant, and empty eyes." Similarly, the People's Daily was accompanied by a picture of a meow girl with large eyes filled with longing. Because of this concern, Poplar Fruit returned to the mountain and thought about the way out of the mountain education. He wants to use modern scientific information technology to break the long-standing unequal distribution of education resources that has affected our country for a long time. A computer and a network cable have become the key to connecting us to the world. In the hands of Poplar Fruit, they have become the key to the poor mountain children to see the world outside of the mountain. They have become the bridge for them to obtain knowledge and enter the world. You can't see the hard work, sweat, and effort of Poplar Fruit and his colleagues, but you should see that because of their hard work, sweat, and effort, in just 1 year, the children in the poor mountain areas of Lidong County have undergone amazing change. And this change will also happen to the children in the poor mountain areas of Liang City. The rest of the report didn't have much to do with Yangguo. The rest of the page was analyzing the feasibility of the new education model of remote teaching. After all, this was People's Daily, which was famous for its macro perspective. However, Tengzun News, which had been reporting on Poplar Fruit carefully, not only sent people to interview Poplar Fruit, but also sent people to Lidong County to take the most realistic photos and make them into graphic news. The theme of their report was more interesting. A genius model's magnificent turnaround. They were more inclined to report the story behind Poplar Fruit's transformation from a world-famous model to a philanthropist. They wanted to know his inner story from Poplar Fruit. It was his girlfriend, who insisted on volunteering at the stray dog rescue station, who brought him positive energy and gave him the idea of doing a charity that could help others. Since the establishment of the charity fund, you can see that Poplar Fruit has donated nearly 90 million yuan through the transparent financial details on the website. I discussed it with my girlfriend. She is very supportive of me doing this, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. At the beginning of the year, some people questioned the source of Poplar Fruit's funding. Now, the editor has obtained a piece of data from Poplar Fruit's boss. It is a sales record of the works translated by Poplar Fruit. From this data, we can see that the reason why Poplar Fruit can earn so much money is entirely due to his own excellent talent. He has translated works that are popular abroad. The exposure of this data was bound to cause an uproar. Many people would discuss and argue about the data, and some smart people even saw the business opportunity of translating books. However, the focus of Teng Zun's news was obviously not on this. However, compared to Poplar Fruit's net worth, he donated more than 80% of his income to help others. This ratio is extremely rare in the world's rich circle. This spirit is worth learning from. For a time, the media's pursuit praised Poplar Fruit to the sky. However, Poplar Fruit had been very calm. He was a little worried. He was worried that the higher he was praised, the worse he would fall. Chapter 1033. Putting aside Tencent news for the time being, this series of official reports caused a huge sensation in the country, mainly in the education field. Of course, most of them were discussions. Some agreed, some had reservations, and some had doubts. There were even some who were worried and doubtful. This education model is immature and undesirable. How can there be an education model where teachers and students can't meet face to face? It's really nonsense. Naturally, many old people shouted that they wanted to defend healthy traditional education. In this regard, netizens sneered and said, if you can do it, then do it. If you can't do it, then don't talk nonsense. Of course, no one dared to do it. These old teachers who only knew how to talk nonsense were actually hypocrites who cherished their own lives. How could they be willing to go to the mountains to eat and sleep in the open? How could they be willing to use their white flesh to feed the mosquitoes in the hot and humid environment of the mountains? Naturally, there were also reporters who found Poplar Fruit to ask for his opinion. Poplar Fruit smiled helplessly and said, after all, remote teaching is just a helpless move. If it can be like traditional education, with teachers on the mountains to guide and follow up the children's learning anytime and anywhere, that would be the best choice. But reality doesn't allow us to be willful. Poplar Fruit's response didn't get any effect. Some of the old teachers in the traditional education field who stubbornly attacked him still wouldn't give up. On the contrary, netizens were overjoyed. Don't allow us to be willful, this somewhat witty phrase, became a hot word on the internet in September. Soon, there were netizens who made a cartoon. Poplar Fruit pointed to the old men who were the size of babies and said, okay, don't be willful, be good. Poplar Fruit was almost broken by them. Unwilling to quarrel with those old teachers, Poplar Fruit began to stop accepting media interviews. However, he was very sincere and objective in listing his summary of the advantages and disadvantages of remote teaching on Weibo. There were still many disadvantages, such as long-term exposure to computer radiation, and the weak restraint of the teachers in the classroom. It required the cooperation of the school administrators who acted as villagers to manage it. One of the shortcomings was the lack of close communication and the lack of concern in life and thoughts. This was in line with what the traditional teachers had pointed out. However, Yang Guozhen expressed her opinion on this issue. On one hand, the remote teaching system was still being perfected. In the future, there would definitely be more psychology teachers to communicate with the children regularly and provide them with the correct spiritual guidance to cultivate their correct outlook on life and values. In fact, Poplar Fruit had done this to the children of Xiong village before. It was just like how he would tell the children stories and reason with them. However, it was not popularized yet. On the other hand, Poplar Fruit chose to believe in the children's autonomy and self-control. Please don't underestimate the efforts of a child with dreams. Although they live in poverty and are malnourished, they are stronger and more independent than the children in the city. The children in the mountains were not as delicate as the children in the city. If they fell, their parents would cry. If the teacher scolded them, they would cry and go to their parents. They lived in a difficult environment since they were young. Even their parents were not by their side. They either died early or went to work in the city. Some children even took on the responsibility of taking care of their younger siblings. They just lacked the resources and environment for fair competition. As long as they were given hope and a chance, they would work 100 or 1,000 times harder than the children in the city. For this reason, Poplar Fruit wrote a new article on Weibo to state his understanding of the poverty in the poor mountainous areas over the past year. In some areas, the state actually provides a lot of support, but after decades of support, they still can't get up. This is partly due to the corruption of the local officials, but more importantly, the poverty is dragged down by the backwardness. Because of the region and transportation, the Miao people living deep in the mountains lack knowledge of the outside world. A child told me that his impression of the world was constructed by his father, who went to work in the city. His father, who was also uneducated, spent little time together and did not speak in detail. His understanding was still very vague. He only felt that the outside world was very big and rich, but it was full of deceit and oppression. It is precisely because of ignorance that many Miao people are entrenched in the mountains. They reject modern civilization and do not want to make progress. It is also because of poverty that many children live in an environment without the company of their parents. They lack the love of a family, the enlightenment of education, and the support of nutrition. When they grow up, they can only live in the poverty and backwardness of their parent. I admire those volunteers who have been teaching in these areas for a long time. Because they have sacrificed themselves to bring modern civilization to the children in these areas, they have brought hope and light to the future. But this does not solve all the problems. After all, the territory of China is too vast. The children who need help are widely distributed, and there are tens of millions of them. Our volunteers are limited. Planning for remote teaching is to break the limitations of space and distance, reduce the sacrifices that volunteers need to make, and let more caring people participate so that more children in the poor mountainous areas can benefit from it. I'm very happy to be able to see the implementation of remote teaching. The scope of benefits has also expanded from Xiong village to the entire mountainous area of Liang City. We will continue to work hard and focus on the quality of teaching. We will add more interest courses outside of the classroom so that children can grow up healthily and comprehensively. At the same time, Poplar Fruit also appealed to the outside world to reduce complaints and malicious speculations, and to provide more suggestions and supervision. Remote teaching was not Poplar Fruit's alone. The charity fund was also not decided by Poplar Fruit. All the data was listed transparently on the internet for people to review. Poplar Fruit believed that more talented people joining and doing a better job of remote teaching was not adding any glory or honor to him. It was actually a blessing for the children in the mountainous areas. Poplar Fruit's article was published, and the in-depth analysis in it quickly received many praises. Many online media reprinted Poplar Fruit's article, praising Poplar Fruit's attitude of doing public welfare. Subsequently, after the reopening of the new school year, the headquarters of the New Dimensions teaching volunteers voted to make all the teaching resources available to the public and shared. Although it was only a teaching video for primary school students recorded by university volunteers, the main teaching content, it was, after all, a compilation and recording of the best talents from various universities in Guangdong province. In terms of quality, it received the praise of many people in the education industry. In particular, Bishop Poplar Fruit's English lessons, the standard of pronunciation, the content, and the rhythm were praised by the Guangdong Province's Education Department as the height of the new national standard. The national standard here was, of course, not the abbreviation of the national standard often used in variety shows. It was the real national standard. This made many teachers who had strange pronunciation feel ashamed. What qualifications did they have to criticize Poplar Fruit and remote teaching? Chapter 1034. If you woke up one day and found that people all over the world were talking about the same thing and playing the same game on their phones, don't be surprised. This was the Internet Plus effect created by the combination of the mobile internet and social media software. That's right, we're talking about Flappy Bird. Back in Guangzhou, he resumed his normal life of attending classes and doing research projects. One morning, Poplar Fruit drove Fong Beibei to school and found that everyone was talking about the game. Of course, Flappy Bird's popularity after the free game was only a narrow Internet Plus effect. Fat Dragon's team might have secretly promoted it, but the viral spread later on was not their doing. It was the difficulty of the game that drove everyone crazy. When you posted a result of 4 points to your circle of friends and felt smug about it, someone soon refreshed your understanding with a result of 6 points. You had no choice but to fight back and work hard to get 8 or 10 points to prove yourself. As for those who scored 20 or 30 points, they were practically worshipped by their friends one after another. Screenshots of their results were even crazily shared in their circle of friends. Flappy_Bird had become popular, but it wasn't until now. At the end of August, Flappy Bird was already popular in Europe and America. First, it was slowly discovered on social media. More and more people tried to challenge the game that was known as the most difficult game in history. Some were defeated, while others were praised by their friends. This was the same model that was popular in China. However, gradually, the trend spread from the ordinary people to the more influential celebrities. Many celebrities and athletes showed off their results on Twitter. Some of them were good at the game, and some even scored 300 points. There were also some who were more amusing, and deliberately showed off their pitiful results. Then, they pretended to be fragile and cried. Not only did such behavior not lose fans, but it also gave people a feeling of down-to-earth and made them more liked by fans. Poplar Fruit was not clear about the situation abroad, but in China, Flappy Bird was ranked first in the number of downloads in the domestic iOS software market in the first week of September. After Fat Dragon returned from Liang, he couldn't stop smiling because their company's phone was blowing up. Many advertisers waved their cash and wanted to throw money at them. Some veteran manufacturers even tried to acquire the game, but Fat Dragon rejected them all in a domineering manner. Now that they were not short of money, it would be meaningless to sell their hard work. For Fat Dragon and the group of lonely hackers, creating a game to make the whole world confused was more important than making money. When Fat Dragon first introduced the game to Poplar Fruit, Kiki played it very enthusiastically until one day Poplar Fruit found that the little girl secretly took his phone to play and hid in a dark room. That made Poplar Fruit angry. Poplar Fruit was worried about Kiki's health, so he decided to strictly control the time she touched the phone. However, it took Poplar Fruit a lot of effort to make Kiki let go of the pixel bird quietly. If Papa can play to the last level, Kiki will stop playing. After learning from Uncle Fat Dragon that this small game could be cleared, Kiki had been eager to play it, so she made such a proposal to her father. Kiki's best score was more than 270 points. This already made Poplar Fruit very surprised. How long would it take to clear the game? Okay, Papa promises you. For his daughter, Poplar Fruit was ready to risk everything. Pinky promise, I mean it. Kiki pouted and asked her father to make a promise. If I can't do it, I'm a puppy. Poplar Fruit smiled and made a pinky promise with her. Then he kicked the puppy gold away and played on the sofa. Kiki laughed at Poplar Fruit for a long time because of his 0 points, but was he really so bad? How could it be? Poplar Fruit's ability to play games was better than anyone else's, and Kiki inherited it from her father. Poplar Fruit, who had strong body control, quickly became proficient in this game, and his score was getting better and better. From the first dozens of points to the last hundreds of points, Poplar Fruit easily broke Kiki's record. How many points did your Uncle Fat Dragon say the last level is? Don't play until Papa's phone runs out of battery, and we still haven't cleared the game. Poplar Fruit played while chatting with Kiki. Just now he got 563 points, but he wiped his sweat and died. This time, he decided to play with both hands. When his left hand was tired, he would switch to his right hand, and when his right hand was tired, he would switch to his left hand. However, he couldn't play endlessly like this, right? There had to be something to look forward to, right? Kiki doesn't know. The little girl slyly shook her head and refused to tell her father. She definitely knew, Fat Dragon would tell her everything. That guy had always been looking forward to having a child, and the thing he couldn't stand the most was Kiki acting spoiled to him. Poplar Fruit glanced at Kiki's somewhat dignified expression, and the corner of his mouth slightly raised. He understood. The last level must not be too far away, otherwise Kiki wouldn't be so nervous. Therefore, Poplar Fruit played left and right, and played, and played. When he played to the 900th point, the environment on the screen suddenly changed. Fuck, these green cement pipes can actually move. The designer, Won Dongha, must have done it on purpose, not following the rules. Not only did the cement pipes move, they were also arranged in a strange pattern. Poplar Fruit accidentally bumped into a cement pipe that suddenly moved diagonally, and died. I don't believe I can't handle you. Poplar Fruit played from morning to afternoon, except for making lunch for Kiki in the middle. Kiki had already fallen asleep on the sofa. The first 900 points were relatively easy, but for the next 100 points, the difficulty increased with every 10 points. In the end, there was a big monster that could spit fire along with the bird's flight path. But Poplar Fruit still cleared the level before Fong Beibei came back. Yes, tears were streaming down his face. He could actually clear the level of this game. However, after clearing the level, the boring and monotonous ending screen disappointed Kiki. Sigh, Kiki thought there would be something very, very interesting at the end. This also cut off Kiki's interest in continuing to play. However, there was a small episode. After Fat Dragon heard Kiki's complaint on the phone, he expressed that he didn't believe that Poplar Fruit had really cleared the level. Therefore, in order to prove himself forced by Kiki and Fong Beibei, he wanted to play Poplar Fruit again. Kiki was not convinced, and Fong Beibei was very curious. She wanted to see the birth of this miracle with her own eyes, and not hear it from Poplar Fruit. Therefore, as she watched, she took out her cell phone and took pictures at the side. Why was she taking videos? Because Fat Dragon said that there was no proof, and the video was proof. Chapter 1035. At one point, Poplar Fruit thought that Fat Dragon had betrayed him for the sake of publicity, so he lost his temper. However, when Fong Beibei pulled Poplar Fruit and told him the truth, Poplar Fruit shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. The video had been uploaded to the internet by accident. They were arguing that it was impossible for anyone to clear the game. How could there be such a perverted person who would break his arm after dozens of levels? The they that Fong Beibei was talking about was none other than her roommates, Lin Xingshan and the others. Fong Beibei lowered her head in shame, her hands moving in front of her chest like Kiki, who had done something bad. She was afraid that Poplar Fruit would lose his temper at her, so she continued, "Then, I wasn't convinced, so I told them that you cleared the game and showed them the phone. Then, Shan Shan, Hua Hua, and the others copied my video, saying that they wanted to show it off to others. I couldn't stop them, so I don't know who got the video and uploaded it to the internet." Fong Beibei's head was almost in her chest. "All right. Silly, what are you afraid of?" Poplar Fruit rubbed Fong Beibei's head and laughed. "I won't be angry with you." Fong Beibei looked at Poplar Fruit timidly and asked, "Then, why did you lose your temper with Fat Dragon?" "It's different." Poplar Fruit laughed. "The video was uploaded to the internet, and it wasn't something that you could control. What does it have to do with you?" "I wasn't angry with Fat Dragon because of the video. I was angry that he didn't discuss it with me and used our privacy for profit. I felt that this was a betrayal, and I couldn't let him go on like this. I was afraid that he would turn bad, so I scolded him so hard." Poplar Fruit explained with a smile. "You won't even let him explain." Fong Beibei covered her mouth and giggled. She thought of how the fast-talking Poplar Fruit had bombarded Fat Dragon with so much nonsense that he couldn't even retort. Just thinking about it made her laugh. Poplar Fruit said with some regret, "Sigh, I have to apologize to him. I shouldn't have scolded him indiscriminately. Hee, uncle, isn't that a deep love, a deep hatred?" Fong Beibei mischievously laughed. After the video was uploaded onto the internet, at first, everyone was more focused on marveling at the game designer's crazy design for the last 100 levels. They marveled at the fact that someone could actually complete the game. "Is it the video that's being played on the phone?" someone questioned. But it was quickly rejected. This was because the way Poplar Fruit tapped on the screen was as if he was playing the piano. It was steady and rhythmic, giving people a breathtaking feeling. Strong. Some netizens sighed and praised, "He's definitely a gaming expert." This video was later dug up by overseas netizens and uploaded to overseas video websites. Just like the original game, it was watched by tens of millions, or even hundreds of millions. Within a few days, it broke Poplar Fruit's monthly record from last year's Ba Fashion Week. However, before this, some sharp-eyed netizens noticed, why does my daughter look so familiar? Kiki's appearance rate was too high, even higher than Poplar Fruit's profile, which was always facing her from the side. She kept jumping around in front of the camera and made all kinds of funny expressions. It could be said that the netizens who were watching the video spent half of their time watching the game, and the other half watching Kiki. For example, Kiki suddenly ran over, pulled Fong Beibei down, and pouted her pink little mouth at the camera as if she was kissing the person watching the video. Then, she giggled and ran away. The viewers couldn't help but praise her for being so cute. Another example was that Kiki couldn't bear the loneliness and ran behind Poplar Fruit to massage her father's back. She looked very sensible, but in fact, she was deliberately making trouble for her father. There was more. In order to disturb her father, Kiki ran to Poplar Fruit and danced in front of him. She even sang a clear song, "The vast horizon is my love, the flowers are blooming at the foot of the green mountain. What dance? Isn't this a square dance?" The viewers who saw this all laughed together with Fong Beibei, who was shooting the video. They were amazed by Poplar Fruit's calmness and liked Kiki's cuteness and vitality. "Kiki, be careful that your father doesn't spank your little butt later." Fong Beibei's smiling voice came from outside the video. Then, she deliberately took a picture of Poplar Fruit's serious expression. Although Poplar Fruit's face was not shown, and because of the theme of the video, many people couldn't help but ignore Poplar Fruit's face for a moment and look at the bright screen in his hand. However, there were still a few Kiki's fans who recognized Kiki. "Isn't this clever and cute little angel our Princess Kiki?" Ever since Poplar Fruit uploaded a photo of Kiki and Swiss Princess Charlotte, he said that Kiki wanted to be called a princess. Later, her fans all changed to calling her Princess Kiki. From the looks of it, the man sitting there playing games was Kiki's father, the low-key, warm man Poplar Fruit. That's right. No wonder he looked so handsome from the side. It's definitely our long-legged oppa. Some hardcore fans even found several ironclad evidence from the video that proved that it was Poplar Fruit. At this moment, Poplar Fruit's fans and Kiki's fans were in an uproar. Even those who didn't play games watched the video to see the two of them. Especially Poplar Fruit's fans, they were proud and elated. "Who said that our long-legged oppa is a nerd? Didn't you see that he's so good at games?" Some fans even found the video of Poplar Fruit's stupid fist that he had recorded to help Chen Anlan. They said proudly, "Look, our long-legged oppa knows martial arts. The person who took the video must be the genius goddess. The place where they live together is so luxurious. Our long-legged oppa can make money. It's so blissful to be his girlfriend." More fans dug up other details in the video. The decoration of Poplar Fruit's living room was exposed without any concealment. Fong Beibei and Poplar Fruit living together was not a new thing. The two of them were never afraid of others knowing about their love. Poplar Fruit's fans were also very rational and had calmly accepted this fact. In fact, it was mainly because Poplar Fruit was a little father with a daughter. Of course, the arrogance of Poplar Fruit's fans was limited to their circle. Poplar Fruit usually kept a low profile and didn't provoke many enemies, so he didn't receive much criticism. Putting aside the cute fans' arrogance, this video still had a negative impact on the game, Flappy Bird. People saw the boring interface after clearing the game and gradually didn't want to continue playing. Fat Dragon made an emergency public relations announcement, saying that this video was more than a month old and belonged to an incomplete version. The game designer had already updated it. Moreover, after clearing the game, there was a super big Easter egg. Not only that, the company also set up a grand prize of $100,000 to reward the first player to clear the game with their own ability. This grand prize once again ignited the enthusiasm of players all over the world. They started to feel lucky because Poplar Fruit had already announced that he wouldn't participate in this competition. Chapter 1036. Everything was normal in the new semester, except that Poplar Fruit had a little exposure from time to time. But he was used to such a life. Usually, he went to class, played with his children, and kissed his wife. He was busy but orderly. His workload this semester was much heavier than before. In addition to the project he was working on in secret, Chen Zhongdai's request was to teach a professional elective course and a public elective course. The number of courses was more than half of what it was before. However, Poplar Fruit didn't care very much. For him, teaching 6 classes a week was no different from teaching 4 classes a week. On the contrary, he hoped to teach a few more classes to pass on what he knew. This was impossible. Letting a student like Poplar Fruit, who hadn't graduated with a master's degree, be an assistant lecturer and teach independent courses. This semester, he even taught a professional elective course. It could be said that he had opened a new path for Higoshiyama University and even domestic universities. There were faint voices of criticism in the education field, including within Higoshiyama University and the School of Foreign Languages. Some people were indignant that Poplar Fruit was treated so well. However, because of the support of the university and Poplar Fruit, such things were gradually suppressed. Today, Poplar Fruit was very happy because he got the half-month data report from Cine Road in September. Forget about other books, anyway, they were steadily increasing. But the sales of his self-written book, Longing for Dawn, increased rapidly at the beginning of this month because of the news. In the past, no one cared about it, relatively speaking, only Poplar Fruit's fans bought the book. Now, the book's sales squeezed into the top 100 of Amazon China. This showed how impressive the growth rate was. Moreover, even if Poplar Fruit's exposure was reduced now, the book's sales still maintained a rising trend. This was no longer driven by the power of fans or marketing methods. It was entirely because of Poplar Fruit's book itself. Poplar Fruit had always been good at writing. He had studied under Master Mo and had read a lot of literature from all over the world in various languages. Now, he had gradually formed his own style. What Poplar Fruit wrote was not nonsense like Chicken Soup for the Soul, nor was it a travelogue with fewer words than photos. What he wrote was what he had seen, heard, and thought. Not only did Poplar Fruit write stories about the mountains that people living in the city could not see, but he also wrote them with great depth. Just like the article he posted on Weibo before, he analyzed human nature and reality, which resonated with people. From the reviews on Amazon, it could be seen that many customers who bought the book said, "I cried after reading it. I feel like my soul has been cleansed. I highly recommend it." The book sold well, but it might not be as profitable as Poplar Fruit's translation of Mr. Mo Yang's book. However, money really didn't mean anything. Poplar Fruit felt that he was not as satisfied as he was when he saw this small report, even when he had earned more than 100 million yuan in the past year. When they got home, Poplar Fruit picked up Kiki with one arm and Fong Beibei with the other. He kissed them on the left and right, then giggled. "Uncle, you took advantage of me again." Fong Beibei chuckled. "What's the good news? Why are you so excited?" "Papa, gold is climbing up." Chichi was at the side, twisting her body to take a look, giggling and laughing. Goldie was currently standing on its hind legs, clinging to Yangguo's waist, licking its lips. Who knows if it also wanted to be kissed by its master? Yangguo turned her head, stretched out her finger, and gently flicked Goldie's wet nose. Goldie felt the pain and quickly shrank back, barking in a circle, and looked at its master with a wronged and innocent expression. "I'll show you a report." Poplar Fruit put Kiki down and let her play with gold. Then he took out a square report from his pocket and showed it to Fong Beibei. "Is this the report of your book Longing for Dawn?" Fong Beibei knew that Poplar Fruit went to the publishing house today. She asked with a smile, "It must be, and it's selling very well. Otherwise, you wouldn't be so excited." Fong Beibei knew Poplar Fruit very well. "Look, how accurate my guess is." Fong Beibei shook the report, supported her waist, and looked up at Poplar Fruit with a smile. Under her playful bangs, a pair of big eyes blinked with a little pride, mischievous. Poplar Fruit smiled and pinched her nose. Then he took the report, pointed at the data on it, and said with some pride, "Baby, look, my book is in the top 100. It's already in the top 100? When I read it last week, I still had to search." Fong Beibei was so happy that she blurted it out. Poplar Fruit was stunned for a moment, rubbed his nose and asked, "You often help me read it." He didn't even pay attention to it. His girlfriend paid so much attention to his work, and the happiness in his heart was rising. "Not really, I used to read it often. Last time my dad wanted to read it, so I bought a few for him." Fong Beibei blushed and stuck out her tongue, and said. She pointed to a node on the graph, and smiled proudly, "Here, I sold 106,000 copies that day, and I contributed a little." Poplar Fruit rubbed Fong Beibei's head, hugged this lovely person into his arms, and said with a smile, "If you want to read it, I'll give it to Dad. Why do you have to spend money again? You even bought a few copies. My dad also wants to give it to his relatives and friends." Fong Beibei giggled. She looked up, looked at Poplar Fruit's face, and said, "You're on the news. My mom called many neighbors to watch TV at home." "Really? Why didn't you tell me?" Poplar Fruit was a little surprised. He had never heard of this news. In fact, Poplar Fruit felt that Fong Beibei's mother had always had some opinions about him, and even didn't like him very much. "I didn't dare to tell you before. I was afraid you'd think my mom is snobbish," Fong Beibei said in a low voice. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "How can that be? We're a family. Your mom is happy for me. I'm very happy." It was a bit like her son was admitted to a good school and wanted everyone to know, wasn't it? At dinner in the evening, Fong Beibei suddenly raised her head and suggested with a smile, "Uncle, didn't I tell you before to see when there's a chance to invite Sister Yujia over for dinner?" Poplar Fruit was stunned for a moment. His hand that was feeding Kiki stopped in midair. Kiki also quivered. She first looked at her father, then looked at Sister Beibei, her little ears pricked up. "The day after tomorrow is the autumn equinox. Let's invite her over for dinner, okay?" Fong Beibei finished the rest of her words. "Ah." Poplar Fruit carefully looked at his girlfriend's face. It was very good, there was nothing strange, but Poplar Fruit still didn't dare to neglect, and said tentatively, "You don't have to be like this, right? She's very busy." Chapter 1037. Previously, Fong Beibei also mentioned this matter, but Poplar Fruit thought that she was just joking, and after the two of them got busy, this matter faded away. But today, Fong Beibei mentioned it again, and it seemed that she was serious. "She's quite busy." Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said in embarrassment, "Maybe she's not free. It's just dinner tonight, how can she not be free?" Fong Beibei looked at Poplar Fruit snappily and said, "And Sister Yujia's lifestyle is not good, how can she not take care of her body and work so hard?" Poplar Fruit frowned and asked, "Baby, you're very strange. It's true, don't think too much, just simply invite her to our house for a meal. The last time she came, she didn't have a good tour of our house." Fong Beibei bit her lower lip, looked up at Poplar Fruit and said, "You're not honest, tell me the truth." Poplar Fruit was not familiar with Fong Beibei. Fong Beibei's action, it was obvious that she was guilty of lying. If Kiki was not here, Poplar Fruit wanted to pull his girlfriend up and give her a spanking. "I know, I'll tell you the truth." Fong Beibei saw Poplar Fruit's frown, which was a little scary. She pouted and explained, "I know, my relationship with Sister Yujia is not very good, last time we even quarreled." "You shouldn't have quarreled," Kiki whispered at the side. Being glanced at by her father, she immediately shrunk her head and played with the toy in her hand, but her ears were still perked up to eavesdrop. "Yes, we shouldn't have quarreled." Fong Beibei really reflected and said, "I understand now. I should have confidence in you, uncle. No matter what others say, you will never abandon me. You're so good to me, so why should I be jealous?" After watching too many soap operas with Fong Beibei, Poplar Fruit's thoughts were also somewhat distorted by the melodramatic plots in these soap operas. In fact, he really misunderstood Fong Beibei. Fong Beibei sincerely wanted to invite Zhang Yujia to their home. "I want to fix my relationship with Sister Yujia. Even if we can't be friends, we don't want to be enemies like we are now." Fong Beibei felt a little wronged, but she still spoke from the bottom of her heart. "It's also uncomfortable for you to be stuck in the middle. A large part of your current job is related to dealing with her. I'm not that kind of selfish woman. You give me a sense of security, and I don't want to cause you trouble." Fong Beibei's eyes were very clear, and Poplar Fruit saw his own figure in them. Fool. Poplar Fruit reached over, held her hand, and gently squeezed it. He smiled and said, "It doesn't matter what I do. What matters is that you're happy. You don't have to suffer for me. I'm not suffering for myself." Fong Beibei anxiously defended herself. She was so anxious that the tears that had been rolling in her eyes earlier spilled out. "You really aren't. I won't be jealous anymore and live a life of fear every day." "You're really not afraid?" Poplar Fruit smiled and scared her. "You're very likely to be inviting a wolf into the house. You're not a little sheep. What am I afraid of? Anyway, I'm entrusting my life to you." Fong Beibei held Poplar Fruit's hand and rubbed her face on it lovingly. Her skin was very good, soft and delicate without any makeup. "You really want to invite her over?" Poplar Fruit lovingly pinched Fong Beibei's nose and confirmed again. "Of course." Fong Beibei gave a serious and affirmative answer and said, "Don't worry, I won't mess around. I'll try my best to reconcile with you Jie. You're really a fool. Fortunately, you met me. If it were another man who had a mistress outside, you'd still have to cook and send food to her at home." Poplar Fruit flicked Fong Beibei's forehead and helplessly agreed, "Okay, I'll give her a call after dinner and see if she's free. I just need to remember that you're good to me, uncle." Fong Beibei giggled. She dragged a chair and ran over to Poplar Fruit's side. She hugged Poplar Fruit's arm and said coquettishly, "I also want you to feed me." "No, Kiki is starving." Kiki, who had been waiting for a long time, hurriedly grabbed her father's right hand and snorted, "Mama is not honest. Kiki kindly let you talk, but after talking, you came to snatch Kiki's papa." That's right. Fong Beibei and Kiki laughed and played with each other. After dinner, when they were washing the dishes, Poplar Fruit could not help but ask, "Baby, I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me the truth at the beginning? I was afraid that you'd think I was jealous." Fong Beibei pouted and said, "I always give you the feeling that I'm jealous, so your impression of me will get worse and worse. Then you're terrible at lying." Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "I saw through it at a glance." "Oh, you're not allowed to lie. You're not allowed to lie either, okay?" Fong Beibei stretched out her wet little hand and pinched Poplar Fruit's soft waist. "If you lie, your nose will become sharp and long like Pinocchio's." "I'm not Kiki. This kind of fairy tale can't scare me." Poplar Fruit's eyes turned. He first peeked outside. There was no movement, so he gently hugged Fong Beibei's slender body from behind. Then he held her hand in the water, lowered his head, and rubbed her ears together. "What are you doing?" Fong Beibei's legs were a little weak. She hurriedly held Poplar Fruit's hand and moaned. "When I heard you mention Pinocchio, I thought of a joke." Poplar Fruit smiled and whispered in her ear. He also used his breath to stir her crystal little ears. "However, I'll tell you when Kiki falls asleep at night." Of course, Poplar Fruit was not the kind of man who would mess around. He let go of Fong Beibei, who was teased by him, and smiled mischievously. "Bad uncle." Fong Beibei's cheeks were as red as if she was drunk, and it took her a while to recover from her heavy breathing. She glared at Poplar Fruit, patted her messy clothes, and then quickly bowed her head to wash the dishes. This was just some of the small things they often did in private. As for the big things at night, the young couple said that it was not enough for outsiders to know. Poplar Fruit did not forget the business. When Fong Beibei went to bathe Kiki, he called Zheng Yujie and sincerely invited Zheng Yujie on behalf of Fong Beibei. Zheng Yujie was silent for a while, then she smiled softly and said, "So you've entered the house?" Ahem. Poplar Fruit did not point out Zheng Yujie's inappropriate choice of words. He smiled and said, "If you don't have time, I won't force you. Really. There is no other meaning in inviting you over. Beibei simply wants to fix the relationship with you." So hateful. Zheng Yujie didn't want to go. Chapter 1038. Go. Why don't you go? To be honest, Zheng Yujie didn't want to go, because no matter how luxurious it was, no more luxurious than her own home, it was also a happy little nest. If she went there and saw Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei showing off their love, she would only feel more depressed. However, Zhang Yujie's stubbornness emerged again. Since she dares to invite me, I dare to go. Zhang Yujie snorted and said, okay, don't talk nonsense. See you the day after tomorrow. Do you think you can show off in front of me like this? Zhang Yujie threw the phone on the bed, unconvinced. She picked up the clothes on the ground with her feet and was ready to take a shower. She still snorted, I'll show you why the flowers are so red. The autumn equinox was on Friday. Because it was a holiday, Fong Beibei's afternoon training was cancelled. Poplar Fruit sent her and Kiki home at noon, but he still had classes, so he went to school in the afternoon. Anyway, she gets off work very late. Don't rush to prepare the meal. Poplar Fruit smiled and said to Fong Beibei before leaving, wait for me to come back and prepare slowly. It's no problem. However, Poplar Fruit didn't know that Zhang Yujie took a day off, and also gave all the staff a day off, to buy clothes. When Zhang Yujie came over, Fong Beibei was playing a mathematical game of matchsticks with Kiki. For example, now, Fong Beibei put many matchsticks into a mathematical equation of 7 minus 11 is equal to 4. You can only move one matchstick to make this equation work. Fong Beibei said with a smile. Living in a family of top students, Kiki's education had never fallen behind. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei did not teach her anything. At most, they would use some interesting games to teach Kiki some basic knowledge. As for how much she could understand, they would not test it repeatedly, nor would they ask for too much. However, Kiki was indeed talented and intelligent. After playing a few times, she had learned most of the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. However, this matchstick game had stumped Kiki. She stared at the matchstick on the floor and pondered. She held her small face and squeezed out a smile. However, looking at the tangled eyebrows and big bright eyes, coupled with the smile that didn't have a trace of a smile, it was really awkward to the point of being cute. If it were any other child, they would probably wave their claws in annoyance if they couldn't solve it after a while. However, Kiki had probably inherited her father's indomitable spirit when it came to solving problems. She kept staring at the matchstick, forming an image in her head and moving it around in various ways. Goldie, don't mess around. Fong Beibei hugged Goldie, who poked its head in. Just now, Goldie came over and sneezed, blowing away the matchstick. Looking at its eyes now, it seemed that it wanted to move its claws and fiddle with it. Being hugged by its owner, Goldie simply lay down, raised its neck, and comfortably enjoyed its owner's tickling. Goldie was almost 2 years old, and it had finally grown into a dog. Usually, when it was on all fours, it was almost 1 meter tall. When it stood up, it was even able to put its hand on Fong Beibei's shoulder. This kind of big dog needed a special dog license in the city. Fortunately, Goldie had a gentle personality, and golden retrievers were not as scary as fierce big dogs like Tibetan mastiffs. On the contrary, it was very amiable. When they walked in the neighborhood, Goldie was often held by other children to play with. I don't know how to do it. Kiki scratched her head in distress, and asked Fong Beibei for help. Ma, why can't you do it? 4 could become 11, 9, 11 could become 4, 7 could become 1. But there was no way to make the equation work. Kiki showed all the changes she could think of to Fong Beibei. Fong Beibei bent down, put the matchstick back into place, and said to Kiki with a smile, Kiki, in mathematics, you have to learn to think in reverse. There is definitely not only one way to solve a problem. Only by being flexible can you solve it. Goldie's nose was blocked by Fong Beibei's clothes and stomach, and it couldn't breathe. It struggled for a moment, then quickly turned over and ran away. 7 minus 11 doesn't equal 4, right? Fong Beibei asked with a smile. Yes, 11 minus 7 equals 4. Kiki nodded, her mind clear. Then, what does 11 minus 4 equal? Fong Beibei continued to prompt. She didn't directly tell Kiki how to solve the problem, but guided her to think. Kiki's eyes lit up, and she quickly held Fong Beibei's hand and said, Ma, don't say it first. Kiki knows. Kiki quickly reached out her small hand, picked up a matchstick with the equal sign on the right, and moved it under the minus sign on the left. 7 equals 11 minus 4. So it's that simple. Kiki jumped up excitedly and high-fived Ma. High five. She jumped for a while, then sat down, licked her lips unsatisfied, and urged, "Ma, hurry up, continue." Although she didn't solve it herself, Fong Beibei's prompt seemed to have opened a brand new door in Kiki's mind. Her mind seemed to have become lighter and clearer, and this feeling made Kiki want to stop. Math is fun, right? Fong Beibei smiled proudly at Kiki. If language was Poplar Fruit's signature, then math was Fong Beibei's domain. Kiki had already inherited Poplar Fruit's language talent, but she didn't show any special talent in math. Fong Beibei didn't intend to make Kiki a math genius or a mathematician. She only hoped that Kiki could learn to think logically in math, so that Poplar Fruit wouldn't drag her down and make her a math idiot. Now it seemed that Kiki still had a lot of potential. At this moment, the doorbell suddenly rang. Fong Beibei set up a new question for Kiki to ponder and play with, then got up and went to the door. Through the visual access system, Fong Beibei saw Zheng Yujie standing downstairs. She was wearing sunglasses as usual. Today, the bright white frame of the sunglasses looked very fashionable, and didn't seem to be pulled down by the clothes she was wearing. Yes, Zheng Yujie didn't dress sexy today, but changed into a simple and carefree sportswear, as if she was going out to play golf. However, because the short-sleeved top was tight, it looked bulging in the front, and the ordinary sportswear couldn't hide her hot body. Previously, it was mentioned that Zheng Yujie was on vacation to buy clothes, but in the end, she wasn't satisfied with all of them. Doesn't Poplar Fruit like purity? Why did I dress so gorgeously and let Fong Beibei outshine me? Zheng Yujie gritted her teeth and changed into the sportswear that she only wore when she went to the gym. Seeing Zheng Yujie standing downstairs, Fong Beibei was stunned. She didn't know that Zheng Yujie could come over so early. Didn't Uncle say that she would only come over at night? It's only 3 o'clock now. Fong Beibei's heart was beating fast. Without Poplar Fruit, she looked shorter when she saw Zheng Yujie. However, since the guest was here, she couldn't not let her come up, right? Chapter 1039. Silence, stillness, and some noise. That was the current situation at home. Silence and stillness came from the absence of Poplar Fruit. Not long after, Fong Beibei and Zheng Yujie fell into an awkward silence. As for the noise, it was the sound of Chichi and Goldie playing. If it wasn't for Kiki, it would be as if there was no one at home. In fact, seeing Fong Beibei, Zheng Yujie couldn't help but ask a few questions, but seeing Kiki there, she was too embarrassed to open her mouth. Zheng Yujie simply sat on the sofa casually and played with her phone, as if it was her own home, crossing her legs, leaving Fong Beibei alone restlessly. "Kiki, go upstairs and play first, okay? Mommy wants to talk to your auntie for a while." Fong Beibei whispered to Kiki. This won't do. Originally, they wanted to ease their relationship. How could they be in a deadlock like this? Hearing the word mother, Zheng Yujie's heart was sour, and she was a little unhappy. "Okay, then, Mommy Ma, don't quarrel." Kiki was a little reluctant, but her eyes rolled and she agreed. "Don't worry, Mommy Ma won't quarrel with Auntie." Fong Beibei smiled and pushed Kiki's little butt. Kiki ran upstairs, and Goldie, who didn't seem to like the atmosphere downstairs, also followed. The two little guys ran to Kiki's game room. However, the little guy didn't close the door, but raised a finger at Goldie. "Shh." Goldie might not understand other people's orders, but it could execute Kiki's orders without any mistakes. Goldie sat down with its front legs, stuck out its tongue and looked at Kiki, wagging its tail on the ground. It was very obedient. It was like an adventure. Kiki nervously licked her lips, her big eyes sparkling. She picked up the slippers, put them in the room, and then tiptoed out. In the corridor, Chichi turned around and looked back. Gold was also nervously crawling behind her, sticking close to the ground. Kiki raised her little finger again. Goldie stuck out its tongue and put its head on the ground again. The two little guys were like thieves, sneaking to the stairs. Kiki didn't dare to look up, so she had to lie on the ground like Gold and eavesdrop. Hoo-hoo. Goldie moved forward and squeezed under its little master's body, using its fluffy body as a cushion for its little master. Kiki smiled brightly, but she didn't make a sound. The two little fellows leaned against each other and eavesdropped. Sister Yujie, please have some tea. Fong Beibei diligently made tea, trying to start a conversation. Although the tea set and tea were bought by Poplar Fruit, as a girl born and raised in Guangdong province, she still had the skill to make tea. I don't drink tea, give me a bottle of mineral water. Zhang Yujie stretched her body and lazily said. Sister Yujie, don't drink mineral water all the time. It's not good. This is pu'er tea grown in the mountains of Guishan. I heard that it's a local specialty. It's rich in anti-aging catechin compounds. We women drink some of this tea, it's good for our skin. Drink some. Fong Beibei persuaded. Zhang Yujie frowned. Hearing Fong Beibei's words, she was actually a little tempted. Moreover, Fong Beibei's skin was really good. Her face was rosy and tender. It was much better than her skin that needed to be maintained with skincare products. In the end, Zhang Yujie drank it. However, she still found fault with it. Beibei, tell me, why don't you turn on the air conditioner in such hot weather? Zhang Yujie said with a smile, is it to save money for Poplar Fruit? Don't worry, now that Poplar Fruit makes a lot of money, he doesn't need to save money at all. Fong Beibei smiled and waved her hand, saying, no, I don't turn on the air conditioner because it's cool in the upper floors. With the balcony doors and windows open, I don't feel hot. Besides, it's not good to always have air conditioner. It's easy to cause respiratory disease. You think that's the case? Is it because Poplar Fruit always has to endure the heat because of you? Zhang Yujie was very unhappy with Fong Beibei's long-winded manner, and aggressively asked. That's what he said. Fong Beibei laughed and said, when I was in the dormitory, I used to turn on the air conditioner with my roommates. I'm very afraid of the heat. Later, when I lived with Uncle, I learned a lot of healthy living habits from him, and now my body is a lot better. Listening to Fong Beibei's words, Zhang Yujie was somewhat silent. Sister Yujie, if you feel hot, I'll go and get the air conditioner for you. It's now in the guest room downstairs. Fong Beibei stood up and said. Chichi was startled by her sudden movement. She hurriedly pulled Goldie and fled in a hurry. The pitter-patter of their footsteps could be heard from upstairs. Fong Beibei felt a bit strange, but she didn't think much about it, because her spirit was still tense. No need. Zhang Yujie waved her hand, snorted, and said, if you can endure it, I can also endure it. Beibei. Zhang Yujie simply didn't pretend to be cold. Pretending is not her character. She likes to be straightforward. Her pair of beautiful red phoenix eyes stared straight at Fong Beibei, and asked, I know the reason why you invited me here. Do you think that by putting on the attitude of the hostess, you'll make me back down? The atmosphere suddenly became tense, as if there was a powder keg placed there, ready to explode at any moment. However, today, Fong Beibei didn't want to quarrel with her. She quickly waved her hand and nervously said, no, Sister Yujie, you misunderstood. I don't want to put on any attitude to provoke you. This time, I invited you to my house to ease the relationship between us. I like Poplar Fruit. Do you think that with this, you can still be my friend? Zhang Yujie disdainfully smiled. Don't be naive, little sister. You're a student, yes, but you're also an adult. Don't pretend that you don't know anything. I know, we're unlikely to be friends. Fong Beibei sadly said, but I still want to improve the relationship between us as much as possible. We can't always be like this, confronting each other like enemies. What do you mean? Zhang Yujie didn't understand. Every time Uncle wants to go to the publishing house, he has to carefully ask for my opinion. Fong Beibei said. She raised her head and sincerely said, I really don't have anything to do with it. He looked for you because of the publishing house. I understand. I don't want him to do a bad job because of me, and I don't want him to be caught in a dilemma between us. What do you mean by a dilemma? Zhang Yujie couldn't help but ask. Obviously, Poplar Fruit has already made his choice, okay? But she didn't say anything else. She didn't want to expose her weakness that night in front of Fong Beibei. It's just that, if our relationship can ease a little, Uncle won't have to bear too much psychological pressure. Fong Beibei explained. Chapter 1040. Then why don't you give him to me? Hearing Fong Beibei's words, Zheng Yujie stood up and said angrily, you know how important I am to him. If you love him, you should let him go and not drag him down. It seemed that they were back to the topic of the argument between Zheng Yujie and Fong Beibei. No, it's not like that. This time, Fong Beibei did not back down, but she was not in a hurry to argue. She said softly, Sister Yujie, don't be anxious. Sit down and listen to me slowly. Let's not quarrel, okay? Zheng Yujie really couldn't do anything to Fong Beibei in this state. She didn't want to make a scene out of nothing. She sat down with her arms crossed in anger and said, who wants to quarrel with you? Uncle, I won't give him to you. Although her voice was soft, Fong Beibei still said firmly, moreover, Uncle won't give up on me. I know, aren't you spoiled because of his favor? Zheng Yujie was irritated. She couldn't bear to hear Fong Beibei say that because it was the truth, other than relying on Poplar Fruit's love to bully me, what else can you do? It's really not like that. Fong Beibei was so anxious that she wanted to cry, but she wouldn't be weak anymore. She sniffed and said, I don't want to bully you, but aren't our hearts the same? We both want to be good to him, right? I've come to a conclusion. Why did Uncle and I get together? Fong Beibei said seriously, as if she was solving a math problem. The first reason, of course, is that we both had a good impression of each other from the beginning. Although it wasn't love at first sight, but really, when we first met, we felt good about each other. Love at first sight is a lie. Zheng Yujie said sourly. Yes, that's right. Love at first sight can't last long, but later, when we met again, we slowly got to know each other, and we began to discover each other's strengths, which attracted us. Fong Beibei recalled sweetly. That's the second. Thirdly, we can feel a sense of security from each other. Fong Beibei smiled and said, you probably know that I actually don't have a sense of security. Previously, I was always jealous because my heart was not at ease and I would always let my imagination run wild. But fortunately, Uncle has never left me. But, Uncle is also very insecure. Fong Beibei said softly, ever since Lu Yunran, the girlfriend of the uncle in front of me, left him, it caused him a lot of trauma. When I first saw him, Uncle's eyes were filled with sadness. However, in order to take care of Kiki, Uncle could only be strong. He didn't even have the time to think about whether his future life would be a mess because of the child. He didn't want to start a new relationship because he was afraid. He was afraid that he would lose her again, afraid that someone would reject him again because of Kiki. I heard from Uncle that I was the first person besides him that Kiki could accept at that time. Fong Beibei smiled and said, so, when he first confessed, I wondered if it was because of Kiki that he chose me. Later, I found out that Uncle actually really likes me. Fong Beibei recalled the 2 months when she insisted on keeping a distance from Poplar Fruit's life. Every night, the two of them would talk on the phone, and they couldn't wait to tell each other the trivial things in their lives. These were all bits and pieces of happiness. The relationship with Kiki was just a small catalyst. Fong Beibei smiled and said, because I like Kiki very much, and Kiki likes me very much, Uncle felt a sense of security, so he mustered up the courage to confess. Are you telling me your story to provoke me? Zheng Yujie listened silently and finally couldn't help but ask. Fong Beibei's story was beautiful, but she was her rival in love after all. No. Fong Beibei quickly shook her head and said, I accidentally said so much, but in fact, what I want to say is that I'm not completely useless. What Uncle wants is a family. I can accompany him and Kiki, and then we can build a warm and happy family together. Fong Beibei said, besides, when he needs to work, I can take care of Kiki. Actually, this was also something that Zheng Yujie couldn't do. She was a career woman. If she had to stay at home, change diapers for the children, wash clothes, give up her job, and revolve around the little one every day, if she had to wash the nail polish on her hands, wash the rice and cook, Zheng Yujie would rather die. What you do, isn't it the work of a nanny? If you hire a nanny, won't you be replaced in minutes? Zheng Yujie was still somewhat unwilling to admit this point. It's not the same. Fong Beibei softly retorted, a nanny can't give me the love and companionship that I can give to Uncle, can't give me the care and guidance that I can give to Kiki. Then what's the meaning of your life? No job. No friends, No independent thoughts. Do women have to become the vassal of the family? Zhang Yujie suddenly felt that Feng Beibei was very pitiful. Although she disdained, she still frowned and asked. Feng Beibei laughed and said, Sister Yujie, you may have really misunderstood. The companionship I'm talking about doesn't mean that every day, every night, every moment. For example, taking care of Kiki. If I have time, I will take care of her. If uncle has time, he will also accompany Kiki. If we don't have time, then we will ask our parents, relatives, or friends to help take care of her. Apart from family, we all have our own studies and things to do. Feng Beibei laughed and said, Recently, I have been busy preparing for the competition, and uncle has helped me with a lot of things. Sometimes at night, in order to let me have more time to study, he doesn't even do the housework for me. Speaking of friends, uncle and I are clear about these interpersonal relationships. On the weekend, it's common to go out with friends and go shopping. How can you say that we don't have our own lives? Feng Beibei said, we just put family in the most important position, and give the best time to the people we love the most. Zhang Yujie opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She was really not convinced, but she found that she had no reason to refute. What Feng Beibei said was exactly what she could not do. At that time, if the question was asked in reverse, it was actually correct. Apart from adding flowers to the foundation of Poplar Fruit's success, what can you give him? Can he be happy? Chapter 1041. Finally, Poplar Fruit came back. He came back with big and small bags of raw meat and vegetables. He opened the door easily and took off his shoes while shouting, Baby, I'm back. However, when he saw two women in front of him, the expression on his face could no longer be relaxed. What? Zhang Yujie came early? Feng Beibei came over to help Poplar Fruit take the bags in his hand. She smiled and explained to him, It turns out that your publishing house is on holiday today. Sister Yujie came early. They didn't fight. Poplar Fruit was a little surprised. He looked at their expressions suspiciously, and then looked at Kiki, who had just arrived. Feng Beibei and Zhang Yujie were fine. Although they didn't talk and laugh very exaggeratedly, the atmosphere was not tense. Kiki was smiling happily. Seeing her father come back, the little girl was the happiest one. Papa, Papa. Kiki asked her father to pick her up, then put her arms around her father's neck and whispered in his ear. Kiki learned a few math problems today and played games with matchsticks. Kiki will teach you, okay? When there was something good, of course, she wanted to share it with her favorite father as soon as possible. Poplar Fruit smiled and kissed his daughter's face, saying, Not now. Isn't the aunt at home? I have to entertain the guests, so I have to cook for everyone. Kiki can teach me later. When she said that she was a guest, Zhang Yujie felt very uncomfortable. She sighed faintly, crossed her hands in front of her chest, and stood proudly. Well, Kiki is hungry too. Papa, hurry up and cook. Kiki smiled and kissed her father, then ran to play with Goldie. Feng Beibei just entered the kitchen. Poplar Fruit looked at Zhang Yujie in confusion and asked, Why are you here so early? Are you two all right? Zhang Yujie snorted and said, Who knew you weren't at home? Don't worry, I didn't do anything to my daughter's friend. Isn't world peace what you want to see? It was impossible for her to admit that she was suppressed by Feng Beibei's words today. Miss Zhang had never admitted defeat. Poplar Fruit laughed dryly and fled into the kitchen. Feng Beibei was sorting the vegetables bought by Poplar Fruit into baskets and plates. Baby, you guys are okay, right? Poplar Fruit pressed Feng Beibei's shoulder from behind and helped her massage it. He was still a little nervous as he asked. Feng Beibei said with a smile, It's okay, don't worry. Sister Yujie came 2 hours early, and I talked to her for a long time. Then, we talked about a lot of things. Even if we can't become good friends, our relationship won't be as tense as before. She made it sound so simple. Poplar Fruit felt that it was a little unbelievable, because he knew Zhang Yujie's character. Once she decided on something, even 8 horses couldn't pull her back. Moreover, she didn't listen to advice. Even if Poplar Fruit asked her to give up many times, she still wouldn't be willing to. And between the two women, in Poplar Fruit's view, it could be said that the relationship between them was like fire and water. In TV dramas, this was called a harem fight, but on the internet, it was called a catfight. It was completely impossible to ease the competitive relationship, so how could it make Poplar Fruit's jaw drop and have a dramatic change in just 2 hours? What's more, this matter was led by the weak and delicate girl that he had always thought of as someone who needed his protection. Poplar Fruit didn't know that in fact, Fong Beibei was talented and intelligent, and could distinguish right from wrong. Previously, she cried and was jealous from time to time because she hadn't completely recovered from the shadow of her first love. Since Poplar Fruit accompanied her through the most emotional night, Fong Beibei had completely let go of the past and really recovered her original personality. Just like when Poplar Fruit first met her, the bright and intelligent girl was back. Fong Beibei understood that instead of being timid, it was better to be magnanimous. Since she couldn't change other people's thoughts, Zhang Yujie was determined to pursue Poplar Fruit's obsession, and she couldn't change the fact that Zhang Yujie and Poplar Fruit were in contact. After all, it was Poplar Fruit's career. For the sake of Poplar Fruit, she had to learn to accept her. The acceptance here was naturally not the kind of dirty acceptance that everyone thought, but turning an enemy into a friend. Even if they couldn't become friends, they didn't want to be enemies. Through understanding her, she would also let her understand herself and her family. Perhaps one day, she would finally let go. Fong Beibei was open and above board. She put all her thoughts on the surface from the beginning to let Zhang Yujie know, and let Poplar Fruit understand her efforts. She was using her tolerance to better protect this family, and this kind of open scheme just happened to hit Zhang Yujie's weak spot, and it was also something that Zhang Yujie knew but couldn't resolve. It was also for the sake of Poplar Fruit. She couldn't reject Fong Beibei's kindness to her, and it was also for the sake of Poplar Fruit. She couldn't quarrel with Fong Beibei anymore. As for other despicable means, Queen Zheng wouldn't do it, and she disdained to use them. Damn it! Fong Beibei had shown her trump card right from the start, but even so, she didn't have any trump card in her hands that could win. But even so, Zheng Yujie wouldn't admit defeat. Wasn't it just becoming friends? Wasn't it just using Poplar Fruit's loyalty to scare others? Zhang Yujie secretly made a push in her heart. Can't handle a little girl like you? I don't believe that I can't. Becoming friends could also increase the chances of her interacting with Poplar Fruit. Zhang Yujie was full of fighting spirit as she thought, who's going to win and who's going to lose? It's still hard to say. Poplar Fruit didn't know what women were thinking, and he couldn't be bothered to think about it. Alright, it's good that you guys don't fight. Haha, I'll go change my clothes. I won't cook Chinese food today, but I'll cook a nice and delicious French meal for you guys. Poplar Fruit patted Fong Beibei's slender waist and walked out laughing. Poplar Fruit didn't learn French cuisine systematically, but there were many guides on the internet. He had tried it a few times before, and with his sensitive sense of smell and talent towards food, he got the hang of it easily. The specialty of French cuisine was that the food couldn't be overcooked, and it had to be cooked to 60 to 70% to ensure the freshness of the food as much as possible. The sauce had to be prepared carefully and use less cooking oil. Butter, cheese, and gelatin could all be added into the list of ingredients. The most important thing was the plate presentation. It had to be delicious, and it had to look good. Kiki liked to eat French cuisine, and she liked to eat French cuisine made by her father even more. Her opinion couldn't be used as a reference. However, Zhang Yujie, who was never picky about food but was very picky about her compliments, actually gave Poplar Fruit a 5-star rating. This made Poplar Fruit very surprised. French cuisine paired with a Mediterranean-style restaurant, dining table, and tableware. Fong Beibei and Zhang Yujie both drank a little red wine, and their slightly tipsy appearance was very beautiful. The two of them even forced Poplar Fruit to choose the best. Fong Beibei's purity, Zhang Yujie's coquettishness, Fong Beibei's affection, Zhang Yujie's stubbornness, Fong Beibei's purity, Zhang Yujie's coquettish, Fong Beibei's affection, and Zhang Yujie's stubbornness. It was really hard to choose. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit had an idea. He raised Kiki's little hand next to him and said with a smile, "No one is more beautiful than my family's Princess Kiki. Kiki also thinks so." The little fellow was so happy that she couldn't close her mouth. Chapter 1042. A few days later, Fong Beibei followed the team to the United States. She had a lot of responsibilities this year as she had to lead a small team to participate in the competition. Compared to last year, with the support of Poplar Fruit's secret manuals, the entire Higoshiyama University was able to achieve great success. This year's results would not be very optimistic. This was because the secret manuals would definitely be leaked out. Many schools not only obtained Poplar Fruit's secret manuals through various channels, but they also invited their own English majors to train their team members. Dongshan University had already lost its original advantage. It could only compete with its domestic and foreign opponents with real swords and guns. But this is good too. Fong Beibei said to Poplar Fruit in high spirits. Only in a fair environment can we know if our results are better than others, and if we can get the most valuable first place. As the team leader this year, Fong Beibei was aiming for first place. This confidence did not only come from Poplar Fruit's private lessons, but also from her unremitting efforts over the past year. After last year's competition, Fong Beibei clearly understood her own shortcomings. With her talent in mathematics and the guidance of her mentor, Fong Beibei was no longer the same as before. Poplar Fruit and Kiki set off to meet up with Fong Beibei on National Day. At that time, Fong Beibei had just finished her closed preparation period and competition period. Poplar Fruit had also adjusted the school's curriculum, so they had 2 weeks to play in the United States. After going to the United States, they naturally had to visit their old friend Alan. Other than bringing the children to play in Children's Paradise Disneyland, Poplar Fruit also chatted with Alan for a long time about their achievements over the past year. Because of your card game, we have been cursed a lot less this year. Alan smiled with a red face. Not only was there a lot less criticism, but Hearthstone was also a game that allowed Blizzard to earn a lot of money. The reason why there wasn't a lot of scolding was because Blizzard liked to skip votes. Needless to say about the World of Warcraft, there were a lot of veteran-level players who were so old that they were about to turn into ashes. They were really crying and scolding Blizzard for not doing anything, but they were still reluctant to play this old game that had accompanied them for more than a decade. As for the Hero of the Storm that was about to be released, it had been delayed again and again. Due to some of the pictures and news leaked during the closed beta, the hungry netizens were already stomping their feet and cursing non-stop. Fortunately, Hearthstone was able to temporarily save the burning flames. The success of your games on mobile platforms is much better than Hearthstone's, Alan said enviously. Although he would never say this in front of outsiders, he honestly admitted Blizzard's decline in the mobile game market to Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit laughed. How is this my game? It's all designed by my friends, it has nothing to do with me. Although he had invested in popular games such as IMMT and Flappy Bird, Poplar Fruit didn't care about it and didn't know the details of the operation. Even if they made a lot of money, it was just a number on his account. However, when it came to mobile platforms, Poplar Fruit still had some experience, because he had a part in Flappy Bird's success. Mobile games nowadays aren't just carriers of games, they're also important tools for people to spend their fragmented time. Poplar Fruit spoke with assurance. Moreover, for games, people are more willing to share with their friends, just like in previous online games where they could team up with their friends to fight monsters. For mobile games, if you can increase social interaction, you'll definitely be able to achieve good result. Alan didn't dare to disagree with the first part, but when it came to the relationship between games and social interaction, Alan nodded silently. This was because in the second half of the year, a lot of outstanding games had shown this trend, and Flappy Bird was the most dazzling representative. Poplar Fruit didn't understand these things. The only reason he could speak with assurance was because he had read a lot of books, and read too many of the latest and most comprehensive newspapers and magazines. Among them, there were many technology and financial magazines that analyzed these business models, and there were many in-depth works by capable people. Poplar Fruit relied on his strong memory to be able to talk on paper, and Alan was stunned. After playing at Alan's house for a day, Poplar Fruit brought the absent-minded Fong Beibei back to the City of Angels where the competition was held. In the process of watching a Lakers game, they received a notification from their teacher. After listening to the phone call, Fong Beibei excitedly threw herself into Poplar Fruit's arms and wiped away her tears. Fong Beibei won again. Yes, Fong Beibei won the special prize this time, the most valuable special prize. How could she not be excited? In order to prove her ability, this time, she didn't team up with other senior brothers and sisters who had won excellent results. Instead, she teamed up with two girls in the same grade who had officially joined the training this year. No one was optimistic about them. This year was different from last year. Any team in Higoshiyama University could win the prize. Some teachers were worried that Fong Beibei, who had won the special prize last year, wouldn't get anything this year, so they persuaded her. Some senior brothers and sisters who were rejected even looked at her coldly. Fong Beibei only had their own efforts, and Poplar Fruit's encouragement. As the team leader, she took the lead. Even if she had to learn English, which was the most painful thing for her, Poplar Fruit took her to memorize words and practice writing papers in English every day. She needed to carry the whole team and lead them forward together. Because she was carrying too much, after Poplar Fruit came over and took her out to play, she couldn't go home to enjoy herself. She was always worried, thinking about her teammates and the unannounced results. Finally, the results were announced. Fang Beibei also shed tears in Yangguo's arms as if a heavy burden had been lifted off her shoulders. She was just trying to be strong. After all, she was still a 20-year-old girl, wasn't she? Because it was half-time, the cameras in the Staples Stadium accurately captured the scene in the audience. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei were on TV. Of course, they didn't know that the scene was also captured on Chinese online TV. The TV stations were broadcasting commercials at this time, but Poplar Fruit noticed the cheers of the audience. "Baby, look." Poplar Fruit held Fong Beibei, who was still crying, and his gluttonous daughter, who was holding popcorn, and pointed at the big live TV and laughed. "Kiss. Kiss." The cheers of the audience were endless. Although no one recognized Poplar Fruit for the time being, this was a common warm-up program in an NBA stadium. Kobe, who had not returned because of his injury, stood up and clapped in his suit on the sidelines. "Baby, come on." Poplar Fruit, who rarely showed affection in front of outsiders, looked affectionately at Fong Beibei, who was wiping her tears and giggling foolishly. He lowered his head and kissed her on the lips. "Kiki wants it too." Kiki didn't care about the others. When she saw her parents kissing, she held the popcorn bucket and pouted her little mouth. Her actions stole the limelight from Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei. The audience looked at Kiki on the screen and laughed loudly. Poplar Fruit raised his head and smiled as he kissed his daughter's little mouth lightly. Then, the whole family happily waved their hands at the camera that was approaching them. Chapter 1043. His rise to fame this time was similar to last year. The only difference was that last year's star was Mr. Mo, while this time, Poplar Fruit was the only star. Of course, the level of fame had increased, but the form was still the same. On one side, the media bombarded Poplar Fruit with all kinds of interview requests. On the other side, people from the entertainment industry also came to join in the fun. Many mediocre agencies waved money and rushed to the door, wanting to sign Poplar Fruit. Many variety shows also sent Poplar Fruit invitations. Most of the interviews were under the protection of Chen Zhongdai, so they didn't disturb Poplar Fruit. Only some big media companies that he couldn't refuse, Poplar Fruit took some time to chat with them. This was one of the few opportunities for the onlookers to see Poplar Fruit respond directly. As for those agencies, Poplar Fruit directly told the security guards in the residential area to keep them out. Not a single one was allowed to come in and disturb him. Fortunately, it was a luxurious residential area. The people who lived here were all rich people, so the security guards didn't dare to neglect them. If it was still the teacher's apartment on campus, Poplar Fruit would definitely be annoyed. Poplar Fruit also turned down the invitations to variety shows, including his invitation to go to the Happy Base Camp again. Poplar Fruit didn't agree either. He was busy. He rushed back to teach the students, and he had to translate Meng Luo's novel in a foreign language. More importantly, He was about to finish the topic of his new Chinese learning method, the word-splitting method. This was a topic that even Chen Zhongdai was excited about. Poplar Fruit didn't have time to think about other things. Don't forget, he still had to go to Sweden at the end of November and the beginning of December. Chen Zhongdai gave him a strict order. I gave you a break before, but you still can't stop playing? Hurry up and write the thesis for me. Don't drag it out until December. Let's strive for a grand finale this year. Poplar Fruit had 3 classes every week. In the past, there were already quite a number of students who attended. Now that he had become famous again, all the teachers and students in the school knew that the best Swedish master and great translator in the country was teaching in their school and had even started a class. Hence, they all rushed over to listen to his class. The reason why double quotes are used here is because these are all titles given by the media. Poplar Fruit is not a recognized master. All of a sudden, the students listening in on the side squeezed out the real students so much that they couldn't even enter the classroom. Poplar Fruit hurriedly informed the school to change the classroom into a large classroom that could accommodate 160 people. However, it was just enough. The classroom was full, and there was still a group of people standing at the back or sitting on the floor in the classroom corridor. Someone took a picture of this situation and uploaded it to the internet. Later on, it was quoted and hyped up by some media outlets. Of course, Poplar Fruit didn't care. He still taught seriously for the sake of the students who were listening attentively. The reason why he said this was because many students, especially the female students, came to see people and not to listen to the class. However, the atmosphere in the class was good. Poplar Fruit was still teaching the basics. Hence, some of the basic pronunciation exercises could be done by more than 200 people after Poplar Fruit patiently explained and guided. It was a spectacular scene. He didn't know how long this popularity would last, but Poplar Fruit hoped that it would continue. After all, there were too few people who learned other languages in the country. Swedish was a language that most people wouldn't be able to use in their lifetime. To put it bluntly, there was no point in learning it professionally. However, if it was a minor or a second major, in addition to mastering English, learning Swedish could be the key to a person's success. Of course, it wasn't just Swedish. It was the same for other languages. The reason why Poplar Fruit only taught Swedish now was that he was now famous for it. In fact, the school neglected that Poplar Fruit knew many other languages, including Persian, Hebrew, Finnish, and even Tibetan, which he had recently started to learn. It was mentioned that Poplar Fruit had started to translate Munro's works. However, before this, Poplar Fruit had already translated several of Munro's short story collections into Chinese. Now, because Munro had won the Nobel Prize, the foreign language copyright of her books had fallen into the hands of New Translation Road Publishing House. However, it was precisely because the previous bet was too unreliable that Poplar Fruit didn't take the foreign language copyright seriously. They were afraid that it would never reach their hands, so the foreign language translation had not started yet. According to the results of the emergency meeting between Zheng Yujie, Pang Yu, and Poplar Fruit, they would first release the Chinese translation of Munro's novels. Then, according to Poplar Fruit's translation progress, they would release the foreign language translation alternately. This would maximize the use of resources. Poplar Fruit's translation of online novels had come to an end. Fortunately, there were still more than 60 excellent translators working on the novel translation, so the New Translation Road's contributions were still abundant. Poplar Fruit would continue to cultivate new talents in the school and Shindar to meet the growing demand of the foreign market. Of course, Poplar Fruit was being used like a scalper. He only needed 3 hours of sleep at night, so he had a lot of time to farm. Oh, no, work. The domestic readers were happy because they could now buy this year's Nobel Prize-winning books on Amazon. Some of them had been released before. All of them were Yang Guo's translations. It could be said that they moved the heavens and the earth. Through reading Poplar Fruit's translation, they began to understand why Poplar Fruit was famous. Compared to those shoddy translations, Poplar Fruit's translation was really a work of conscience. Not only did it not feel out of place in the language, but one could also feel the unique writing rhythm and charm of the original author. On the side of New Translation Road, With the help of 2 Nobel Prize-winning works, it could be said to be developing rapidly. Recently, its name had been frequently appearing in the newspapers. According to Zhang Yujie, many authors of good quality had submitted to New Translation Road. It was very hopeful that they could change the situation of content production relying on the marketing department to buy. In addition, the negotiations with Tengzun had been in a deadlock. This was because Tengzun Literature, which was not short of money, hoped to acquire New Translation Road to expand its sales channels overseas. Zhang Yujie was not short of money at New Translation Road, and she had her own company. Naturally, she did not want to be taken over by others. However, after Poplar Fruit returned this time, Tengzun Literature finally reached a cooperative relationship with New Translation Road. Both parties, Tengzun Literature's subsidiary company and New Translation Road, exchanged shares. New Translation Road and the other party exchanged 15% of their shares. Zhang Yujie used her own shares. Including the shares that were distributed to Xinda and Pang Yu, Zhang Yujie only had 50% of the shares left. This was only the controlling shares, which was a very dangerous limit. Tengzun Literature also gave us the original shares. No matter how you look at it, we didn't lose out. We even made a small profit. Poplar Fruit smiled and comforted Zhang Yujie. I still have 20% here. Why don't you take it back? It'll be safer. It was really not a loss. Although Tengzun Literature had just been established for less than a year, its market value was at least 2 billion yuan. It was not worse than New Translation Road. Moreover, in terms of prospects, New Translation Road and Tengzun Literature had huge potential. The original shares exchange this time could be said to be a win-win situation for both parties. No need. You take it. Zhang Yujie looked at Poplar Fruit and said, I'd rather believe in you than anyone else. You'll be my strongest support, right? Of course. Chapter 1044. Poplar Fruit was not the most popular person in China in October. He was, at most, a well-known figure. He was more of a legend in the academic and intellectual circles. When it came to the commoners, everyone just laughed happily and said that the handsome young man was quite good. Then, there was nothing else. What really attracted the public's attention was a parent-child program from South Korea that had just been broadcasted in China. Where are we going, Daddy? When Poplar Fruit was still in America, the first episode was officially broadcasted on Friday primetime on October 11th. The first episode attracted the attention of the entire country. Not to mention the star fathers, the 5 children were all very unique. The wind-like girl, the crybaby princess, the cool brother Stone, the handsome Tian, and the childlike Kimi captured the hearts of the entire audience, including the hearts of Poplar Fruit's family. Although they did not make it in time for the first episode, Fong Beibei, who had been looking forward to it since a long time ago, found a video online and watched it with Poplar Fruit. Then, Kiki joined in, and everyone started to watch it from the beginning. Funny, a pronunciation that's between calling and cute. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Daddy. Learn from me. Kiki placed her little hand in her father's palm and shook it. She giggled and said, see you. Love you. Poplar Fruit did not follow the script and deliberately misbehaved. It's not see you, it's love you. Chichi was a little confused by her father's words. She couldn't tell the difference herself, so she quickly corrected herself in exasperation. No, it's not love you, it's see you. Let's talk about this first. Poplar Fruit laughed mischievously. Aya, I'm not playing with you anymore. The TV is on again. Kiki quickly turned her head back. The camera panned to Kiki's home. After being amused by Kimi's shyness and cuteness, Poplar Fruit smiled and pointed at the TV. He said to Kiki, Kiki, look, brother Kimi has to pack his own luggage. The toys you usually play with, you still need Daddy to pack them. Kiki turned her head and covered her father's mouth. She pouted and said, don't talk. Don't talk when you're watching TV. No way, Chichi was the one who usually talked the most when watching TV. This was definitely an excuse. Poplar Fruit looked at the little fellow's blushing face and laughed. He did not continue to educate her. Poplar Fruit also knew that the child was quite resistant to lecturing. He would find a chance to slowly cultivate her good habits in the future. If he continued to lecture her now, Kiki might not be happy watching TV. Angela, who had been woken up from a deep sleep, wiped her tears and cried like a little kitten. Kiki was a little embarrassed and began to bury her head in her father's arms. "What's wrong?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. In fact, he had already guessed the reason. "Papa, Kiki, does Kiki cry so badly when she gets up?" Kiki asked shyly as she buried herself in her father's arms. The little fellow was growing up now, but there were two things that had not changed. The first was that she liked to be clingy with her father and liked to act like a spoiled child. The second was that she was very grumpy when she got up. Moreover, not only did the latter not lessen, but it also became stronger as she grew older. Whether it was in the morning or at noon, as long as Kiki was woken up before she had enough sleep, she would definitely cry for a while. With her father around, she would recover faster. Without her father around, even Fong Beibei would have to spend more than 10 minutes coaxing her. It seemed that Angela's behavior made Kiki think of herself, and she began to feel shy. However, shyness was one thing. After a while, she would forget about it. It was estimated that she would still cry when she woke up next time. "No, it's not exactly the same," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. However, he changed the topic and said, "If you eat a little more, then you will be as ugly." Ugly was just an exaggeration. How could a child be ugly? A weeping beauty was even more lovable. However, hearing her father's words, Kiki became even more shy. She moaned and buried herself in her father's arms, unwilling to move. When they arrived at Sister Cindy's place, Kiki heard her father and mother say that Sister Cindy was beautiful. Only then did she sneak out to look at the TV. Then, she raised her head and pouted at her father, looking jealous. Poplar Fruit noticed it. He smiled and touched Kiki's little face, saying, "What's wrong?" "Papa said that Kiki is not beautiful," Kiki said thoughtfully. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei looked at each other and laughed. He pinched Kiki's little nose and said with a smile, "How could it be? Our Kiki is the most beautiful. The most beautiful Princess Kiki in the world is in our house." At this moment, Kiki was beaming with joy. She held her father and turned back to watch TV. "Papa, why is Sister Cindy sleeping alone? Isn't she afraid?" Kiki asked curiously. Well, here came the opportunity to preach. This was what Kiki had proposed. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "What's there to be afraid of? Papa and Mema are in the next room. Don't you also have your own room? But you don't want to sleep alone." "But, I want to sleep with Papa." Kiki hugged her father and said reluctantly, "Kiki doesn't want to leave Papa." What a soft and pleasant voice. It was precisely his daughter's coquetry that Poplar Fruit couldn't refuse. Instead, he flinched first. He hugged his daughter and said with a smile, "Well, we'll talk about it when you want to be alone in a room. You have no idea." Fong Beibei patted Poplar Fruit with a smile. It could be said that this episode was very interesting. There were many scenes that made Poplar Fruit, Fong Beibei, and Kiki feel emotional and moved. For example, Xiaoji and Kimi, who was crying, hugged each other in the shabby spider room that the crew made as a spoof. For example, the children were reluctant to part with their father and even cried when they were separated from their father to do a task. And for example, the girl Cindy, who was as energetic as the wind when she was doing a task. In the first episode of the show, Chichi liked Kimi the most. She was attracted by the way he addressed Xiaoji as daddy. After watching the entire show for 2 hours, she was like a repeater. She imitated Kimi and called Youngwa daddy. She didn't get tired of it. However, after watching for a while, she changed back. "Papa, Gulu, why don't you call me daddy?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. He was brushing his teeth. On the other side, Fong Beibei applied toothpaste on Kiki's teeth, and then handed the toothbrush to Kiki. Kiki waved the toothbrush and giggled. "Because daddy sounds like Kiki's doll." Poplar Fruit was instantly shocked, and Fong Beibei was shaking with laughter. After thinking it through, it turned out that Kiki was talking about her Barbie doll. Papa sounds better, Kiki commented seriously, and Poplar Fruit nodded affirmatively. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.